Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I'm joined by the Great Kat Kosmala to talk about her time on Bob's Burgers, as well as teaching at the legendary Cal Arts. I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons that help support this podcast. Bill, Brent, Bryce, Eight-Legged Bird, Jacob, and Jordan. Thank you all so much for your support. It truly means a lot. If you want to become a member of our Patreon channel to help support this podcast, get all these episodes early and ad-free, follow the link below and sign up today. Now, let's get to that chat with Kat.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cartoon Chronicles. I'm your host Julian, and today I'm joined by Kat. Kat, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, I'm super good. How are you,
Oh,
Julian?
I'm so good because I've been looking forward to this one. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking Bob's Burgers as well as Cal Arts because Kat here has done double duty. We'll talk about a bunch of things you did, but particular Bob's Burgers. We might hit some DuckTales stuff in there too because I love DuckTales. My little
Oh
littles are
yeah.
starting to watch that now. They found it on Disney Plus not too long ago, and for sure
Oh,
we'll
that's
talk
exciting.
about you teaching over at Cal Arts. But I told you I was going to hold this one until we hit record. You sent me a list of things that you worked on and a list of your accomplishments and things that you really wanted to talk about. So the first one on there was Butts. This is Bob's Burgers during the art crawl,
Was
and
that
then
really the
this
first
was
one?
the
I guess.
I think so.
Okay.
It was the
They're
nightmare
not in
sequence
order of
that
importance,
has
I'll state. Um,
no, but what I love about this one, and the reason I was holding on to this one because I wanted to ask you to see if it was a inspiration.
hmm,
Any chance that the Dumbo bath scene was inspiration to this?
100% it was. That's
Let's
the
go.
yes, you got
I
it.
love
You
that
got
scene.
it. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because it wasn't always that way.
Mhm.
This was early season one stuff. We were kind of just I don't know, everything was very collaborative and very open in those days. There's a lot of talking amongst animators and directors and everybody. And I remember with that particular sequence, the director of that episode, Jen Coyle, had pulled me in to talk to me about the dream sequence. It was just like, I think, a generic like dream nightmare sequence.
Mhm.
Um, with that song, or it actually wasn't a song about butts, but it was about the butts, the artwork in the
Mhm.
restaurant and how perturbed Linda was at it. And she was asking me if I had any ideas for what it could be or what references to look for. And something in me immediately said, we should look at the Dumbo sequence, the one where he gets drunk and it's the pink elephant sequence.
Mhm.
So we watched that, and it was the thing that sent her off for inspiration for the whole sequence. And then what was really fun about that time too is we got to animate it
Yeah.
in-house. A lot of that sequence. I didn't do all of it, but I did a good portion of it. I think mostly at the beginning of that sequence where the two elephants kind of step a little closer and then
Mhm.
their butts join up into that circle that bursts in, and all the animals are walking backwards out of the trumpet. That was a really fun thing to animate. And my buddy Marcelo did a couple of the other iconic scenes towards the end. But it was a really fun moment in that series because it was truly collaborative and very organic, just sprung out of this conversation of like, we have this nightmare sequence, we're not sure what to do with it, what would be fun, what would be fitting, and we just kind of worked together to make it happen. So it's a very fond memory I have on that show.
Now, I love the scene and then going back and rewatching it. Like I said, I've been going down the catalog of all the Disney movies with my two littles because I think
Mhm.
that's something that's very important to do. We just watched the live action Lilo and Stitch on Monday. They really wanted to
Oh, I'm
go see it.
sorry.
Me too. Um, and
I
I
haven't
as
seen
I
it. I'm just assuming. Um,
so there's a lot of things that they do differently.
mhm,
It's just I think more so than anything, other than they have the source material, and then they just don't really do the source material. They hit on like the
mhm.
greatest hits, if you will. Um, there were so many moments in there that I really think that if they would have taken a little bit closer look at the animated version, and then implemented that into the live action, if that's the way you wanted to go, I think it would have hit a little bit easier for me. But I've also become in this headspace ever since doing this show. Way back in the day, 5 years ago when I started the show, I used to shit on shows that I didn't like, right? And then I started taking a look because I would get all these messages, and they would go, "Hey man, I really like that show. I think you should take a look at it." And I started thinking. I'm like, why am I shitting on these shows that I don't like? Obviously, they're not for me, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, there's so many people that work on these shows that spend their life doing this. This is like their love, right? Like, would I want somebody coming into the restaurant I work at and saying, "Hey, everything you do is shit"? And I start going, like there's people that listen to my show and like my show. I don't want to be the person that might turn them off of watching something, right? And
Hmm.
I made a conscious effort right after I had probably like five or six like emails or messages through that going, you know what? I'm actually gonna like take a step back and go, you know what? It's for somebody else. It's not for me. Not everything has to be for me, right? So my Lilo and Stitch, that's the animated one. That's the one Chris Sanders and
Yeah.
Dean Dubois came up with. You know what I mean? So I've got mine. I wish they would have done a couple things differently, but the thing that I had blast doing was my littles loved it because they love Stitch. They love the animated one. So they got to like laugh when Stitch did the things. And the fact that they had Chris Sanders still voicing Stitch, it meant a lot. So I was like, at least they did that nod. However, I say all of that. I don't even know why I got on this tangent, but the Dumbo sequence in particular, and then the butts
Hmm.
was like, oh, now I remember where I was going. This might be a stretch, so I don't know if this one will link up, but any chance that the colors you guys chose was pulled from a UPA cartoon as far as like a homage to, because that's the vibe I got past Dumbo. I was like, this is
No, no.
UPA-esque.
I mean, at least not that I know. I think more so it was pulled from the Pink Elephant sequence, or like
Okay.
reminiscent of the Pink Elephant sequence,
Hmm.
very high fantasy colors, really
Yeah.
saturated, everything, fantastic colors rather than your normal
Hmm.
vocal color. I think that was more the reference there,
Yeah.
but UPA shorts and stuff would have been inspired by Dumbo, or those things were happening concurrently, I think. Or UPA actually was
UPA
50s,
was
excuse me.
post,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that was
UPA was
post that. Never
post
mind.
Dumbo.
So maybe they were inspired by Dumbo.
It's possible, but like I said, it was more so the colors than anything. Because, like I said, it screams Dumbo right out of the gate.
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, you can't bat 100 here. I went 1 for 2 on this one.
it's okay.
You
Well, you
know what I
got the
mean?
more important one for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm a big fan of UPA. But
Yeah, yeah.
the Dumbo, like I said, Dumbo, that is probably top 3 greatest Disney scene of all time, right? And the fact that that's what I love about Bob's. There's so many things that you guys pay homage to, whether it's a
Mhm.
scene, a piece of dialogue, an art, like something that you want to pay homage to, like the Pink Elephant scene, So I find that just so fascinating that you guys get to do that, man. So taking it a step, was there anything else that you remember about that before I go into the next thing about
Oh
Bob's?
no, no. I think that was it. The main thing was again, it was a really fun memory of just collaborating and bringing another piece of animation
Mhm.
history into the show. That's like it, and of course that happens a lot on Bob's, and it's one of the things I think in any show when you bring in deep pulls like that, not everybody's going to get it, and that's
Mhm.
fine because the people who do will be delighted when it happens.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, I
Yeah.
was delighted. I go, that meme is with Leonardo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's pointing at the screen or whatever. That's exactly what I did. I'm sitting there, I'm watching Bob's Burgers with my wife and my oldest son, and I go, hey, hey, look, look, and they're all on their phones. And by
Yeah,
the
well,
time they look up, they're
it
like,
makes your brain happy, right? You're making a
yeah,
connection. You're saying this and this together, and
hmm
release of endorphins.
that it was, man. It was a great scene.
Yeah.
Now, with Bob's Burgers, like I said,
Hmm.
this is a Mount Rushmore show for me. I love this show. It's so nice to see, a family unit being a family unit, like it's sticking up for each other. It's not like just like let's shit on
Hmm.
Meg because Meg sucks from Family Guy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just like you mess with one Belcher, you're gonna get them all, right? They're gonna form like
Hmm.
Voltron and really take you down, right? So what I love about this show so much is, like I said, the heart and the soul that you guys go and from the writing
Hmm.
room, one of the most intelligent writing rooms there's ever been on a show. I mean, led by Jim Dotrieve, which was the head writer over on King of the Hill, my favorite animated, adult show of all time right there. And then the staff you guys had for the art was amazing. The voice casting from start to finish, like I said, this is a perfect show for me. Now, with that being said, when do you kind of find out, that Bob's is a career for you at this point?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So definitely in first season, we're all having fun, but the general vibe is this is another first season show and it'll probably be
Yeah.
canceled because that is what happens 9 times out of 10. And you can recognize that it's good. You can recognize that we like the show, we like,
Hmm.
what it's doing with the humor and with the characters and with the stories and with everything. But just because something is good doesn't mean it will pass and get a
Yeah.
second season. Plenty of things just get canceled because that's kind of
The
how it
powers that be.
works. The
Yeah.
powers that be. So, but we're all still loving it. We're having a fun time and, hoping for season two, hoping for season two. One of the things that was hopeful about it is Fox was definitely putting behind a lot of money on that show. They were doing a lot of promotion, which is very rare. It was rare then, and it's even rarer now. They were actually promoting it in the newspaper back when newspapers
Hmm.
existed and people read them. They did, I think, a couple pop-up restaurant events and
Hmm.
things. It was actually getting traction that way. And I don't know if when it was clear exactly. It probably wasn't clear until second season when we were feeling much more sure of it.
Hmm.
But in first season, I know we were kind of skimming reviews and I think Reddit posts and maybe YouTube. I don't think YouTube commentary was such a big thing at that time. But we were looking online for what are people saying about the show now that it's premiered. And I remember a very particular comment that we printed out and put up on the door in our sort of animator area because we thought this is the quote that is worth saving. And it was amid a lot of comments about this is a great show and this is a terrible show and people's various reasons why. And we found this one. Bob's Burgers is a okay show, and and that was it. And that's all it said. And I'm pretty sure burgers was misspelled, but
Oh, I
Bob's
hope so.
Bob's Burgers is a okay show, and that delighted us so much that we had to kind of print it out and save it forever because who honestly felt the need to contribute that to the conversation? Um, but we said, yeah, we agree. We think it's okay. And we hope it goes on because it is fun. And it did go on. It did go on. I think once we got the season two, that was a very nice breather in that, okay, well, we've got at least that. And then, it'll be another 6 months to a year before anybody has to look for work. So that's great. We'll keep on trucking. And then I think fairly early on, we got a season three. And then it became really clear that it was catching on and getting enough popularity to be a long-lasting phenomenon. So,
Hmm.
and it's kind of wild now thinking of like how many seasons that show has gone on. Um, you
15
know,
is what they're working on now is
that's
wild.
that's crazy. That's crazy. So my experience is only in the first a little over a third of that, which is which is wild. But yeah.
Some of the greatest episodes I'm sure you got to pass on and got to work on. My favorite has always been Earcy
Yeah.
Riders when Luis loses. Luis is my favorite character in that entire series. She's
Oh
such a
well,
fun
yeah,
character.
very fun. She was my favorite too,
Especially
actually.
it's hard not to like her. I mean, you see it more so like now, but like you really see like not only the writers but the artists like really starting to like I'm gonna steal a line from Shrek, but like they have layers, right? These characters,
Mhm.
you know, and some of those same comments that you see like Bob's Burgers is okay. Some of the things that I would hear some people say like way back when it started in season one, season two, even, you'd hear like very ugly style, very weird style. I was like, no, this is a very
Mhm.
charming style. I had Aaron Hummingston on, which is a current retakes director for the last, I think, two seasons.
Mhm.
And I had asked him, I'm like, hey man, was the Muppets any inspiration? Because it's like they very Muppety in a sense, the way they move, the way they talk. And he's like, it's weird you say that because it was like Lauren and he was just talking about how these guys move, and he made the reference to Muppets, when he started
Yeah.
working there and stuff like that. Do you remember? I said all that to ask you the Muppets question, but do you remember any kind of Muppets influence, or was there
No,
anything that
I
was ever
know
talked about?
that was a talk from way back in the beginning that there was a reference for that kind of head shape
Mm,
and the mouth shapes as well early on.
yeah,
Um, I don't think I was any very deep in those conversations, but I know that's been around since the beginning. And there was actually, you've probably seen it, being such a big fan. There was the original pilot that was done in
yeah.
a very different style,
Hmm.
which I think was also very charming. I really liked that art style. I think it was quite a bit more unique or expressive. And then there was a big redesign and
Hmm.
overhaul where you know, um, I think Fox decided they wanted it to kind of look a little bit more like Family Guy or to,
Soften it up.
soften it up and feel a little bit more like everything else they had going on. So in a way, it kind of made it a bit generic, but I think they also carved out a way um, to still make it look unique. Thank
Hmm.
God, because
Yeah.
we need. Thank God it was able to keep as much uniqueness as it had. Um, but yeah, the Muppet thing was there, I think, from the beginning. That sensibility with the mouths and the head
Hmm.
shapes.
Now, the next question, I always love asking these, especially when I can get to talk to somebody that was on there pretty much from, the first season, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Obviously, I know that this show, and I've said this so many times, ladies and gentlemen, so I apologize. I know this show is special off the
Mhm.
first episode, the human flesh one. We're
Mhm.
talking as soon as Bob goes away and he says, "Hey, we're not changing the special." Like essentially, like Luis, don't write anything. And Luis writes the first special of the day is the child molester. Comes with a free piece of candy. I see this and I go, "Holy shit! This show has balls." Right? You go, they're going to do something. Like if they get more than this season, they're going to do something special because it was just like right out of the gate. Like it felt like you guys got your toe, like the door started to close and your toe got in there, and you're like, hold on, I got some more
Mhm.
stuff to say. And with the rest of the first season just going and like hit after hit after hit, it's like you guys kicked the door open. The editing from joke to joke, like it would sit and marinate for some jokes, but it's just the editing on that first episode was so perfect. It was like everything about that episode. That's why it's on my Mount Rushmore for animated pilots. That pilot episode, Human Flesh, episode one, is like one of the greatest things ever made. But it's just from that moment, I knew it was going to be special. So, with that same question going to you, when did you guys, well, you particular since you worked on the show, but when did you realize, like, oh shit, this show's special, and oh shit, this show can go for a very long time?
Um, I don't know that there's one moment or, definitive moment where that happened. I can't, if I think back, I don't think I ever had that feeling. I think it was something that, like a trust that grew over
Hmm.
time. Um, and part of that was just kind of loving the episodes and loving the characters and getting to know the show and being able to put your heart into it and
Hmm.
try to make something really cool and really wonderful. Um, and hold on, I have to find my train of thought. Because it's a little bit of a complicated feeling, right? It's not something for me that comes in a moment, but over time, and if I could put it into words, it was the realization of where the show's humor came from, and how that evolved. I think it got stronger and more aware of uh, it over the course of the first season. But one of the things that sets it apart is there's a real kindness to its humor,
Hmm.
even when it's
Hmm.
snarky or even when it's edgy or even when it's, um, being a bit vulgar or gross. There's kindness built into it, and none of the jokes are making fun of the characters. They're not, the characters are not there to be toys for the
Hmm.
joke, to play out a joke that a writer thought, and said, okay, I'll put it in this show. The jokes spring out of the characters just being
Yeah.
who they are. That's where the humor comes from. It's not something that is thrust upon them, but it's something that comes organically out of the characters and their interactions and the different pairings they
Hmm.
have with each other, the different situations they get into. And I think when you have that kind of humor built into a show, you have longevity because you'll never run out of situations because every situation is humorous when you put these characters together. So the stakes don't matter, the plots don't matter. Everything can be funny with these characters in any given situation.
That it can. And that's, like I said, that's a mark of a true brilliant show. I mean, like I said, from start to finish and everything in between. I mean, it was like the best writers, the best artists, the best voice actors. I mean, it felt
Mm.
like a simulation in a sense. Like, man, this is like, did they know that this was going to be like this with these actors and these artists and these writers? Did somebody go, this is going to be it? It just, like I said, it felt like everything was what it was supposed to be. I can't think of like one thing I would change from the show. And I will say this, it's like I'm doing this show for the last 5 years. I've walked the line on a lot of fan bases, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Getting involved and talking to people and seeing like what people like and what people don't like when it comes to shows. So it's been very temperamental for some of the fan bases. Some fan bases are super aggro, but it seems like every interaction, with the exception of like maybe one or two people from the Bob's Burgers fan base, like when I find like it's crazy, it's like you see somebody wearing a Bob, like I saw a Top Buns. It was like a Top Gun t-shirt parody, but it was Bob dressed up like Tom Cruise from Top Gun. And I go,
Yeah.
ah, Bob's. He's like, oh, you like Bob? And he saw my shirt. I was wearing a Luis shirt. And it's like can like point out your people. You know what I mean? When like I was at a
Yeah.
mall when I saw it. I was like, I've never known this guy. I just like his T-shirt because it was a parody on Top Gun, but Top Buns with Bob. So it was just it's one of the kindest fan bases I've ever like been a part of, man. Now, obviously, you said Bob's Burgers is just okay. That was the comment you guys printed out, man. But what was it like for you, kind of like traversing that world, working on the show, and kind of getting to like see what the fans thought about what you guys were doing?
It was exciting. I think, when you see the comments, the negative comments start to follow it because they
Mhm.
were there at the
Oh,
beginning. And I think that
yeah.
was where the most hate was, is because it wasn't a proven thing. And there's, always going to be people who kind of want to say something that makes them feel better than the thing they're rating.
Yeah.
And there's also fair criticisms too. Let's be honest. But
Hmm.
we saw those negative comments fall away and fall away and fall away, get fewer and fewer, and there were much more positive comments. And then you saw people, yeah, start to adopt the show in these different weird ways. And you would see fan art, and then sometimes you would see fan art you wish you hadn't seen, and you're like, okay, we definitely made it. We've made it. If this
We've
is
made it,
out
baby.
there, then this is yeah, this is how you can tell. And then we saw, I think it was even season one, we saw someone had gotten a tattoo, and we're like, it's season one. We don't even know if we're getting a season two yet. What are you doing?
Do
But
you
that
remember what the
person was
tattoo
sure.
was?
Um, I want to say it was Tina, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, someone somewhere knows that they got a tattoo season one and that it totally paid off.
Oh, dude, that person, he probably has stock in Bento Box, I would assume. He's like, I'm betting everything on Tina. I need this to win. I
That's
need a new
it.
pair of
Tina
shoes.
to win. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Like I said, it's just a great show, man, from start to finish. Now, one thing I love when I get artists on and we could talk about the art style of the show. I've
Yeah.
talked to some people where it's just like some people have they're very fluid when it comes to like flipping styles, right? Because you have to go on
Mhm.
there, the show's already established, so you know kind of what these characters look like when they turn, when they walk, when they do this. Some people have a hard time, like I said, flipping styles. This was a unique style at the time. It was following the
Yeah.
American Dads and the Family Guys. Do you remember if you had too much of a time kind of adapting the style, or was any of one, two characters kind of hard?
Well, for me, it was less the style and more like just a totally new way of working.
Hmm.
It was a little bit of a software thing. So the job I'd worked at previously was at a Flash studio, and that's kind of what I had my experience doing
Hmm.
in the years leading up to Bombs. And I had been doing a lot of symbol-based animation, rig-based animation, which, for listeners who don't know, there's a difference. You can have different kinds of 2D animation. Some is you're hand drawing every frame, some is you're taking pieces and kind of moving them around. There's also hybrid approaches and all that. So I was doing the kind of animation where we were moving pieces around. And luckily, I still had retained my drawing skills. I was still, competent and fairly practiced at that. And I'd also retained my 2D animation skills because I
Hmm.
was not using the tween tool. It was a very, very good bit of advice I got from my first animation director. My first job at the first studio said, don't tween. And I said, okay, old man. Um, I won't do it, and I learned really quickly, actually, that was really great advice because, you maintain more control over your spacing and you still think of animation the way you would traditionally. So when I got onto Bombs, I was brought there by a producer I'd met at Wild Brain, and I'd worked with her it was like early Monster High stuff, back when Monster
Hmm.
High was 2D animated
Yeah.
a very long time ago. I had worked with this producer and she wanted to bring me on to Bob's. And I had to interview for the position and this and that. One of the questions was, well, do you know Harmony? And I said, yes, of course I know Harmony. And I hadn't touched it since college. It had been a long time. And I'm like, okay, fake it till you make it. I can learn software. It's not a
Always say
problem.
yes. Always
Always,
say yes.
yes, yes, I know. And not, and it wasn't an outright lie. I had worked in Harmony before I had touched like Tindom software. It was just like really outdated knowledge. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, I'm getting this job. It's time to study up. So in the course of About a day, I retaught myself everything I needed to know, and I got some help from another animator friend who I called over. Like he took a break during his lunch hour, and he came by and I said, "Okay, listen, I can help myself with this, and this, and this. What are the things that I don't know to ask about? Show me those things." And he
Yeah.
showed me a couple quick tools and quick shortcuts, and some stuff I needed to save my life. And I taught myself Harmony in that week, and got up to par with it, and I've been flying ever since. It's been great. It's now my animation software of choice. And also, it's never about the software. The skills are transferable. If you have the ability to draw, if you have the ability to animate, software is very learnable. It's like the most the most accessible part of the experience. So
Yeah. That's
yeah, no, luckily the drawing skills were there. And again, I think you can transfer that to learning different styles. Certainly, different styles. Some may be more difficult than others. I would say
Mhm.
Bob's is not a terribly difficult style to learn, which was lucky for me because I was still fairly early on in my career. I think certain shows I've worked on since Bob's I would have had a hard time cracking at that age or at that time in my career, but you know doing Bob's and doing hand-drawn animation again gave me the skills I needed to do everything that I've done since then, which was
Set
a
you up for
real
success.
yes. It was wonderful. I was so happy to be back doing hand-drawn animation, which didn't happen until season two, by the way. Season one was they were actually going with a different studio. I don't know if you know this, but it was the studio in Canada, and they were using sort of a rig technique too,
Hmm.
but they were being told it was hand-drawn, and I had to break the news and say that's not what's happening, guys. Um, uh,
Surprise.
the surprise. So there was a switch, and it was a bittersweet thing because I think that studio really was getting the hang of it and an interesting look at the end of season one. But there was a big switch to a new studio in South Korea at the beginning of season two, and that's when we went fully hand drawn. And I think it's been that way ever since. I don't know. Again, my knowledge is going to be uh, pretty based in the first six seasons.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Now, with you coming onto this show, obviously you said you had to teach yourself a different software, but the skills were
Mhm.
transferable. Now,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that being said, this might sound like maybe a dumb question. I don't know. We're gonna find out. But drawing a character, were you watching the show when you were working on it? Because I know some people just don't like watching what they work on. But were you watching it?
Yeah, I know we were watching it, but also like we were kind of watching it as we were making it. So a lot of the
Hmm.
work was done in post, so you would see it and then it would air a week later. So sometimes we would watch it, on TV after it aired, but also we had kind of just watched the
Yeah.
finished one like, a week or two before that. So but you have to watch the show. You have to watch the show to understand the context of what you're doing and how it fits in and what you need to do to make it better. Um, but yeah, as for watching it on air afterwards, the answer is yes and no. It just kind of depended.
Just depends. So here's
Yeah.
the possible weird question now.
Okay.
Is it is your favorite character to watch the same favorite character that you like to draw? Or do you have like a different connection with characters and then once it's all finished, you're like, oh, I like the way that came out better, or I liked that character more.
Well, that's interesting because I don't know if I can answer as a normal person. The reason I say why I liked Louise is because I like to animate Louise. I found her fun
Hmm.
to draw. I thought, her performance and her vocal deliveries were often over the top and very intense and like really like there was a lot to work with there that
Yeah.
made it really fun. And so that's why she was my favorite. It was just very satisfying every time. Um, and that it's not to say that she wasn't, she was the only character that way. Every character was fun to animate for different reasons at different
Mhm.
times, but that's why she was my favorite. And I'm not sure how I'd answer that if I not worked on the show, maybe just been a spectator. Um, I have no idea what I would say actually.
Oh, that's a lot better of an answer than I thought I was going to get. You know what I mean? Because it's just like like I said, some people, whenever I ask something similar to that, it's just like, it's just doing a job. You know what I mean? And like, there's a lot of people that I've had on here that they just won't watch. Like after it's done, like it's done, it's out there, it's for somebody else. I worked on it, I know that. So, like I said, I
Yeah.
like those type of questions because what I like to cook at home, we don't
Hmm.
cook at work to an extent. You know what I mean? It's just like I don't want to come
Yeah,
home and
yeah.
work on the same sauce I worked on at work for 6 hours at home. You know what I mean?
Well, I
So,
think that's fair. I think that's very fair. And I think there might be a cool down period. It's not that I don't want to watch the shows I work on. I think it's just that I literally just watched them.
Yeah.
So I need like a year and then it'll come back to
Hmm.
me like fresh and I can watch an episode again and be like, oh, yeah, that was pretty good. All
Yeah.
right. It feels new again.
Hmm.
Whereas before, if you've seen it a couple of times in a row, you feel like that's great.
I've
I'm
had
done with it.
enough.
I need to move on to the next thing. There's other things to watch, you know.
No, so
Yeah.
before we go to the next topic you had here,
Yeah.
since you brought up that you loved working with Luis and animating Luis, is there one
Yeah.
moment that might stick out the most as far as you loved animating?
Um, uh, good question. I think the thing that comes immediately is um, she had a reaction at the Boys for Now concert.
I knew you were gonna say this when she starts grabbing like her
Yeah,
ears and pulling
yeah,
them
I
down.
did. I did one of those towards the end. I think it was right before the act break, and I
Hmm.
had. Just speaking of watching the show, like sometimes, Ops is one of those shows that's just kind of everywhere. It's like if you go into a bar or something, it might be on the TV, or if you
Yeah.
go into the gym or something, it might be on the TV or whatever. So occasionally I'll catch glimpses or moments, and it'll be like, oh, I animated that moment. Oh, I animated that moment. And sometimes you'll have like a bit of cringe of like, I was very early on in my career, and I've gotten better since then,
We
and
don't talk about that moment.
it's okay. I did that, but it's all right, whatever. And then there's other moments where I'm like, okay, that was pretty good for like where I was then, and I think that was a moment I was happy with, and I think I had written to you about this too. I think that, more than Louise, even one slightly more fun, maybe not my favorite character, but very fun to animate was Jimmy Jr. dancing,
Yes.
which was uh that was I think probably the if we're gonna point to like what was the most fun thing I animated on that show, in addition to Butts, um, the Jimmy Jr. dance sequence over the credits at the Belchies episode at the beginning of season 2 was a lot of fun. And
Mhm.
because that was, I think, the first episode in that season, we had a little extra time. It was not like in the middle of production where like the shows are just piling up on top of each other
Mhm.
and everything is a dumpster fire and you don't have time to do anything fun, and you just have to move as quickly as possible. With that one, there was actually planning and time, and there was some notice for that. I think I'd been given like 2 weeks to figure that out, and it was really really good fun because the whole thing was very free, and the inspiration was Footloose. Like just
Mhm.
watch the dance sequence in Footloose, and not to copy it verbatim, but to kind of just get some energy from that, get some poses from that. Um, that was really really a fun time, and I taught myself a lot doing it too.
How do you, so I don't know how to word this question. So how do you go, is watching, so this is a question, ask a question. Watching animation for me, I just get to sit back, kick back, take a couple edibles, and just laugh and just unwind, right? But
Yeah.
for you, since it's your job, to do these things, is it hard to like delineate between I'm watching this as a fan and I'm watching this as like I'm trying to get like critique from this. I want to see how I did, how I can do better. Does that question make any sense to you?
I think so. And if I can restate it, you let me know if I get this right. But it's like, can I just watch and enjoy animation, or do I always have to
You
dissect
made it
it?
sound so much better than I did. But yes,
Um,
100%.
okay, the answer to that is going to be a little bit complicated, and that is because I'm an animator and because I care about animation deeply, and I'm always thinking about it and teaching it and thinking about new ways to talk about it or teach about it. Um, I'm always dissecting it. I am always evaluating whether I think that animation is good or bad or in between, or if there's something particularly effective or particularly interesting or great. I'm trying to understand, well, how was that achieved? What can I learn from that? And if something is really, not so good, I would think, okay, well, here's what I would do differently. That is kind of always on, and at the same time. Um, I have found that I can enjoy the work, sit back and enjoy it after time
Mhm.
has passed. So I'm definitely a lot more forgiving of other people's animation rather than my own on screen.
Oh
If
yeah,
it's my
we're
own,
always
I'm
our
going to
biggest
be
critic.
extremely critical,
Hmm.
and it's something that is for, it's both good and bad, right? Being critical of your own work is not bad. It's something that you need to do in order to grow and to assess, if it's uh, if it's doing a good job.
Hmm.
And at the same time, you can't. let that critique seep over into critique of yourself, of like some inherent flaws in you or anything. No, no, it has to remain about the work. But I find also that as time passes, like if time has passed between, me doing the animation and then watching it fresh versus it's been a year and now I'm just seeing it on TV or out in the ether, or, with some distance and perspective, it becomes really clear, like, oh, that thing I was really sweating about so much here, that I was really like overly concerned with and very burdened and very, belabored here. A year later, I'm like, it's actually pretty good. It's fine. That was not that was not a big deal to worry about. So I think
Well,
time also creates some perspective on the work, and allows a little more kindness to creep in.
I think you're right. And the reason I asked you that question is because whenever you guys do something, I try to like, how would I look at it if I was looking at this? Or why did they do, like, very
Yeah.
rarely do I get like super introspective and I go, I want to know what they were saying here. Most of the time, I'm like the best and worst animation fan. If it makes me laugh, I'm all in. It's 10 out of 10 for me. If it like let me
That's it.
forget, yeah, oh yeah, 100%, and I
Yeah.
talked to like so many guys and gals on here, and the one person in particular that he's like the most intelligent person I've ever met when it comes to animation. His name is Brandon Jones. He runs the Animation Destination podcast. He's forgotten more about animation than I'll ever be able to retain. And the way, like, he'll sit there and talk about it, and he was like, "What'd you think?" I was like, "I just thought it was really funny. I liked that part. That was cool. That part ruled." And then I go on to the next one. He just gave this 15-minute articulate. He articulates so well. Brandon, I love you, man. But I draw that correlation. It was like I didn't know like a dish wouldn't work at work until I came into the restaurant and ate that dish, right? Because in my head you
Yeah.
conceptualize something. Same thing you guys are doing. You're conceptualizing these scenes. Oh, this is gonna go great. This is gonna go great. This is gonna go great. And then I tried that dish and I was like, man, this is a real pain in the ass to try to eat in this nice restaurant and not mess up my clothes. So I always wanted to know if like you guys see that whenever you're watching a scene or you're trying to take homage for like, man, if they would have just did this, and then like I said, it led to that. Can you appreciate? Can you watch as a fan, or is it always watching it, trying to get better? So
Yeah. Well, it should be both too, right? Even if you're being critical of things as you watch to learn, that should never completely take the place of appreciation. And it doesn't have to be. It's not like this sort of either or thing. You can also appreciate as you watch and understand that even if it's not great animation, even if it's falling short in places, this thing took time and energy to
mhm,
produce, and that makes it inherently interesting. And there may be other aspects to appreciate. If the animation isn't good, maybe the storytelling is very good. Or if the storytelling isn't very good, maybe the designs are very good. And understanding that animation as a craft, as medium, as I won't say a genre, but just as a means of telling stories and creating art, has many different facets, many different
mhm.
departments that are all distinct from each other. And so, you can have a situation where some are really working well and they're popping off and they have top talent and they're, really, A-list stuff, but other aspects of that same show or that same film or short or whatever it is, may not be quite there, and that's okay. It's still watchable and learnable and, something you can appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, thank you for doing a way better way at asking my question and then also answering my question because I really appreciate it. It was one of those ones like I know it's there. I know I want to ask it. I just don't know if this is going to sound right. But You know, what was it about, getting back to Jimmy Jr. and the dance
Yeah,
sequence in
yeah.
Footloose, what was it about that, particular scene that you wanted to talk about that one in particular? Was it
Oh,
just like first
well,
time you
it's
got to do
that.
one of these?
Firstly, the thing you have to know about animators is we all love musical scenes and we all
Hmm.
love dance scenes, like
Yeah.
kind of across the board. There might be a few exceptions. I can't speak for everybody, but it's a very common trope among animators. We love these things a lot. And that is because they really work in sympathy with our craft.
Hmm.
So animation and drawing for animation is very, very different from drawing for comics or illustration or other kinds of art. It's very different than being a character designer who does, that kind of drawing of what do the characters look like or what does the world look like. When you are an animator, you are drawing characters and action and motion
Hmm.
in time. It's art in time. And
Yeah.
so none of these drawings is really meant to stay on the screen for that long. They're meant to convey an idea of movement and weight and and different kinds of changes in the space, different kinds of changes in the timing, playing fast off actions off of slow actions and having the contrast between those be interesting. And so when you have a piece of music to work to, or when you get to do a dance sequence, which is just, essentially like a sort of rhythmic expression through the body, it's really fun to figure that stuff out because it's very satisfying to say, well, these are the kinds of drawings and poses I want to do, and this is the kind of timing I want to do, and these are the kind of choices I'm going to do to kind of break that up and make it interesting. So it's not monotonous or predictable, but like really exciting, so that when you hit a new pose or go to a new place, it's it's fun,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, like it makes you smile. It may not be a kind of joke that makes you laugh or anything like that, but it's something that should be exciting to watch. The kind of whole goal is to make sure that what you are producing is interesting.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of, I think, theory that goes behind, well, what do you do to make something interesting when you animate? And a lot of it is really just built in for you when you're working to a musical track or doing a dance number. It just kind of flows naturally, and it's a fun time.
Now, what got you more in the Footloose mood? Was it hearing the song or was it like watching the scene play out and then that, or was it both
Oh,
of
it was
them
specific. That was the
simultaneously?
direction I was given. That was the
Okay.
direction of, yeah, like that was specific. Like this is the thing to reference for Jimmy Jr. in this moment. Like that's what we
Yeah.
want to pull. And again, it's not like copied, it's not rotoscoped or anything, but like this is the thing that I think, I don't know if that came directly from Lauren, or if it was from the writers room, or if it was from both, or whatever. But that was the direction, is we need to evoke Footloose for this sequence, this end credits. And it was the first one we were trying, not the first one of the series, because I think we experimented with one season one. I think it was Gene and a keyboard. I forget, but one episode in season one had it. And then I think this was the first one we were going to experiment with the idea of always doing something over the end credits.
Now, was this the first time, as far as Bob's go, and this might be
Mm.
hard to remember, but was this the first time you had a character for that long in a scene? Or would you have had other scenes that might have been a little bit longer?
Um, it might be, because 30 seconds is a long time for anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
How many
yeah,
drawings was
that
that?
uh 30 seconds will be 720 frames, I think, if I was
Holy
right.
shit.
Am I remembering that right? I'm just questioning my math. I know we used to know it, by heart, but I think those end credit sequences were 720 frames long.
Good.
Which you get through it with a number of them because it's mostly reuse or whatever. At least we
Mhm.
did in the season one. There was a lot that was very simple, like gags coming through something that was already animated or using cycles or whatever. But um,
Dude, that's
yeah,
still that's a lot.
it's a chunky sequence. Yeah,
Now, how was
yeah.
that the first? So obviously, it might have been like the first time you had that long of a character. Was that the first
Mhm.
time in your career that you had
Right.
like that big of a scene?
Yes, actually, I think that was the biggest one I'd had up till that point. I think some bigger ones have come along since, but it's hard. I don't catalog them in my brain in that way.
Yeah,
So it's hard to pull them up and to say for sure, oh yes, this was definitely the longest one. Um, yeah, but it was
yeah.
it was pretty tricky. And actually, I think that one was longer than 30 seconds now that I think about it, because I think it had some lead in
Mhm.
and it might have gone longer. Um, but it was good fun. It's a good time.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. Like I said, I love going back and watching, whether you guys pull scenes or you pull episodes. It gives me a reason to go back and rewatch the show. Like I don't have to have any reason to go back and watch it. You hear it so much from all the people that I know that watch the show. It's like our comfort show. It's like putting on a fucking
Yeah,
blanket at the end of the day. You know what I mean? It's like everything's gonna be all right because I'm gonna watch the Belchers for anywhere from 22 minutes to 422 minutes. You know what I mean? So just depends on how much time you got in your hands.
yeah.
Now,
I totally get
with
that.
uh with this one in particular, did they obviously they told you it was going to be Jimmy Jr. because it's Jimmy Jr.'s dancing. It's going to be like that.
Yeah.
Was Does anything stick out as far as like hard to animate on Jimmy Jr. or hard to animate when dancing?
Um, no, because I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I mean, hard is no, it's not hard. It's
No.
just joy. It's just
Yeah.
joy. I love it. I love doing dances and dance sequences with characters. So as far as as hard goes. I wouldn't classify this as that. What I will say, to give some grace to your question though, is it's all hard. All of
Yeah.
it is hard, and so none of it feels hard. I just like doing hard things.
Yeah.
So that's what animation is. It takes, a huge degree of patience and persistence, and you have to be okay with spending a long time in, very short moments, or, they take you a long time to do. You have to do 12 drawings a second. It's 24 frames per second. We usually animate on two, so it's 12 drawings a second, if you have continuous action. So it's a lot of work to get that done. You have to keep at it to do it. The main thing is I just like keeping at it. So it's no problem. It's just a good time. And I love it. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why I love animation so much is it really does keep me in that moment. It's not busy work. You're not just trying to get through it. I think it's really being alive for every single frame and moment and really thinking about what drawings you need to do to capture the weight and the expression that you're after. And I know that's very lofty talk for something that,
Oh,
has
no, not at
not,
all.
it's not the best thing that's ever been made out there, but it was for me at that time, I think, a really pivotal moment and the best thing I had done up to that point. And it was something that I got to really be my be my best at then. Um, and that again helped me grow to where I am now, which I think is a fair degree, uh, a fair degree better.
Yeah.
But it's an important moment in being able to push yourself and see something through to the best of your ability, because that's what helps you grow. Doing the everyday stuff where you're just kind of getting through it, that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can still be in the moment and present and loving that as well. But when you're pushing yourself to do something that is right at the edge of your abilities, I think that's a really fun and joyful thing. And I don't know, I'm really, really grateful for it.
Oh man, it's something that like everybody hopes to do with their life. It doesn't have to be an animation, doesn't have to be cooking. You
Right.
could be, a custodian somewhere, you know what I mean? It's just like we all look for these pivotal moments in our life that we can go, like I looked back and I said, wow, I did it. It was hard, all of it's
Yeah.
hard, like you said, but I kept at it. I persisted. 720 damn photos of me doing this, but I did it, right? So
Yeah.
you might not be able to put like a numerical value on this, but when it comes to that sequence alone, we're just talking your
Mhm.
career from then up until now. Where does that moment rank for you? Watching, getting to do it for one, but then finally getting to see it on a big screen and then seeing your name attached to an episode like that. You know what I mean? What did it feel like? And where does that rank?
Well, at the time I was doing it, I think it would have ranked number one, in
Hmm.
that I knew when I was doing it that, I was having the most fun I'd had yet in my career. But also since then, it's been outranked by a number of experiences, which
Yeah.
is awesome. How lucky am I to be able to say that,
Yeah.
to be able to recognize really fun moments and say, okay, I've grown since then, and now I've done this, and then I've grown since then, and now I've done this, and now I've done this, and it's like really, really cool. So right now, I'd say it's mid.
Yeah.
It's good.
As the kids
It's
say,
still
it
it's
was
still
mid.
it's mid. It's good. It's good. I'm not, I don't. It was a wonderful experience, but also it has been outclassed by a number of experiences now that I think are either, more challenging, or, represent bigger moments of growth, or even greater levels of freedom and trust, which is, the most wonderful thing you can have on a show. So I'd say that for on my Bob spectrum in my career, I'd say that might be a pinnacle moment for Bob's,
Mhm.
but I have other high moments on other shows now, which is just lovely.
Hey, that's a great way to look at it, man. Living in the moment, There's
Yeah,
a lot of fun and a lot of comfort about nostalgia, but it is something cool about seeing where you started, where you're at, and where you're gonna be. You know what I mean? It's just seeing the full circle of it. So thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. The last thing on the list here for Bob's that I definitely want to hit on. Now, Burger Boss. Burger Boss is one of the funniest episodes of the series, bar none. I mean, the fact that he's going back and forth with Jimmy Pesto over this one. But
Hmm.
the one that made me laugh, like out of all the things that you had mentioned, the one that made me laugh harder than any other thing you put in here was the nude beach episode. I love this episode. I don't know why. Maybe it's because where I live in Florida, we're not too far away from a 55 and over community that is nude, you know what I mean? So
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't want to say it struck home, but the place is called The Villages. We were on the news and
Yeah.
we were on what's it called, man? The whole country's radar is the number one most sexually transmitted diseases of, the country and shit. So The Villages was up there for a little while. The whole
Mhm.
loofah story, if you hang a specific color of loofah out there. So I'm hearing all of these stories and I see this nude beach episode. So it was like, man, you guys feel like you're talking about the backyard essentially of where I live at, right? So what was it about? Like, let me read it. It was
Okay.
a
Yeah.
funny
Yeah.
S&P story.
Yeah. Funny
I'm assuming
S&P.
standards
What
and
do you know what
practices.
standards and
Yeah.
practices, which will sometimes give you notes right before you air of like you have to fix this or it can't air because it violates some code of decency
Hmm.
somewhere or whatever. And so the nude beach one I thought was just it was one of the most hilarious S&P notes I think we had gotten in that it was so expansive across an episode. It was so much work and for so little gain, for so little gain, for so little change. But as you recall, it's an episode where, I think 90% of the episode they're, nude and there's multiple
Hmm.
characters and they're all nude. And, they're hid for modesty behind fences or different pieces of architecture. And the the ladies have a sort of Y-shaped
Hmm.
cleavage, right?
Yeah.
And and the note we got across that literally affected about 100 scenes was the cleavage is too provocative. We need to
Fucking
reduce the
Christ.
cleavage and and not remove it,
Just
but it
reduce
needed
it.
to be just reduce it. So instead of like a Y like this
Oh,
big, you'd
fuck.
have like a Y like this big, or we just kind of shortened the lines a bit. And it was like across 100 scenes, and it was like a big to do, and everyone was like, okay, all hands on deck to get through the cleavage notes, and identify every cleavage note, and go through the whole show, and just shorten the
Oh,
lines on this many scenes, just shorten them, which was, I thought, and it's fine, you do what they say, it's fine. There's no bitterness, but it was so funny in that again, so much work done for so little change. Because if someone was going to find those drawings provocative, like really, you know, uh, sexually aroused by the Bob's Burgers characters, reducing it by that much was not going to change it, you know? Um, so,
the notes that
yeah,
I've heard you guys get, honey, what'd you do at work today? I had to reduce cleavage on an animated show because standard and practices said it was too provocative.
yeah,
Green beans or macaroni and cheese was the next question that I was going to be asked. You know what I mean? It's one of
yeah,
those, it's like, it's weird what does get through and then what like
yeah.
they choose to hit on, it's just show to show, it's always different. But I wasn't expecting that, I was like, all right, maybe they had to like throw in more bushes or something like that. But to go
No,
down
no,
there and just
it was,
minimize cleavage.
yeah, to minimize cleavage. I'll also say just for fun, as part of this fun story too, I didn't see it myself, but I think some of the other animators on the team had told me that in some of these scenes they are drawn completely behind
Mhm.
those fence posts,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. So not every scene, but yeah, if you go into the actual skeleton or bones of the file, sometimes you see things that are in the margins, off the edges, or behind certain backgrounds that never make it to air. But you're like, okay,
They
that's
did
in the
it. They went
file.
for it.
Okay.
Well, like I said,
Yeah.
thank you for those stories, man. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
a huge blast whenever I get to talk Bob's Burgers to anybody that worked on it, because like I said, this show is so fun. I mean, my wife and my oldest son and I will watch this one. Not so much now, just because his my oldest schedule for karate is insane, so it's go go go. So hopefully over the next couple weeks, since summer's hitting now, we'll be able to get back up to date and watch some more, because
Yeah.
this is a comfort show, man. Whenever we get to pop it on. Now, I hit you with one of those questions that was philosophical, if you will.
Okay.
Um, we're going to talk CalArts, ladies and gentlemen, because Kat here works and teaches the next wave of animators, right? So we know the next wave is going to be in great hands because we watched Jimmy Jr. dance to Footloose. We watched the butt sequence for Linda. So we know they're in good hands, man. But how do you go from I'm over here, I'm doing this thing called animation to going, you know what, I kind of want to pivot or, maybe take like a little side quest for a second
Mhm.
and I want to teach some animation.
Yeah, this is interesting in that it's also a little bit linked
Hmm.
to Bob's Burgers, or at least a
Oh,
connection
okay.
I had there. And so CalArts have been teaching there for the last 8 years, and it is one class, so it's a side. I've been keeping it going on top of having, other jobs in the industry and that sort of thing. It's my Thursday night gig.
Hmm.
Um, but I originally got recommended for that job by the late great Dave Creek, who was
Hmm.
a character designer on Bob's Burgers. Who's unfortunately passed away before his time. But back in the early days, I knew Dave Creek, and he was, and actually, if you going back to the Muppet Heads, I'm sure he was a part of that conversation as well.
Yeah.
Um, he was teaching 2D animation too for a while, so this second year sophomore level class. And I think early on in my career on Bob's Burgers, there was a week in the spring semester he would bring me in as a guest speaker, and I would go and you know be a guest speaker for his class. And eventually he decided that he didn't want to teach it anymore. I'm not sure exactly why he was taking the break or stepping down or exactly what led to that, but he was stepping down from the role and he recommended me to Maya as the head of the film and video department there at the time, or head of character animation, I should say. Um, and she wanted to meet with me. And
Hmm.
I was on DuckTales at the time. I had moved on to Disney TVA, and it was and I had gotten on to DuckTales by this point. Um, and I got this email from Maya letting me know that she was interested in talking to me and that Dave had recommended me and all this. And I thought, well, this is not right for me. I'm not in a place of my career where I'm ready to do this, but I do want to make the connection. I want to meet this person. Let's have lunch and we can, I can tell her no in person, which is so much nicer than saying no over email or whatever,
Oh yeah.
like, and
Always
then
take the
maybe we'll
interview.
have always take the interview, always take the interview
Hmm.
and, have the connection later. And that was my thinking is that, I'll have lunch now and then, we'll just have a relationship that develops over time. So I invited Maya over to the DTVA campus where we were going to have lunch, and she was talking to me about the job, and I said outright, I don't think I'm right for this. I need you to know just right off the bat, my experience is all in TV animation. I don't have any feature film animation experience, and I this is what I've done, but it's not feature. And because I've been putting like Disney feature on the pedestal, like this is the gold standard,
Hmm.
and this is what CalArts needs, and I'm not that, so I'm not the right person for this job. And I asked her, I'm like, why don't you talk to Eric Goldberg or James Baxter or these other people? Um, and because that's who I thought should be teaching the class.
Hmm.
And in past years, I think some people had taught the class that way, or it's, they had some uh, grades doing that. And they also had already feature guys teaching some of the earlier years or the other years in the class. And she told me, we've had those people, and we've also currently have people who've done feature animation teaching at CalArts. We don't have someone who's done TV animation. Have you considered that your experience is valuable too? We think it would be good for our students to hear and learn about that side of the industry as well, and how techniques or processes might be different, and that there's value in that. And I thought, oh, okay, that's that didn't cross my mind that
Hmm.
there was also value in my experience. And though, I still no, and I'm still not near as good an animator as James Baxter, right? This is like the god, right?
Yeah.
Um, it did put in my head that it was still, I shouldn't discount myself just because I wasn't the perfect candidate, that I could still bring something interesting to the table, and that I, should look at the skills I did have and ask whether they were warranted. And then also, I'm sorry, this is a lot turning into a long-winded story right now.
Oh no, I love
Um,
stories.
okay, well, here's part two of this story is that while we're at lunch and after I was considering that, Sean Jimenez, who was the art director on DuckTales, came up and he recognized me because he's a Cal Arts guy. And he's like, Mia, Cat, oh, you talking with Cat? And then like he realized this was like a kind of interview situation. He's like, you should definitely hire her. And
That's
she's
cool.
great. And it was like, this totally fortuitous thing. Like, okay, well, Sean thinks I can do it, and that's great. And from there, I think I'm not sure exactly about the order, but I believe Mia had reached out and said, I are you interested? If you are, let me know and we'll talk further. And I took some time to talk to other CalArts alum on
Mhm.
DuckTales, of which there were many people at DuckTales. DuckTales were CalArts alum, which is also just kind of true in the animation industry in general. There's a lot of CalArts alum about. So I asked them what they thought of the idea, and saying, is that appropriate? Is it appropriate for me to take that job, or would I be taking a space away from someone else who should have it more, which was my very big concern is that, making sure that I was the right person to fill that role and not taking it from someone who would give those
Mhm.
students a better experience. And they all said, you should do it. This is what you should do. And I thought that was enough buy-in to try it for a year and see how it worked out. See if I could do it, see if the kids liked it, see if I liked it, and just understand what the experience was. So that's what led me to take the job.
So we know how you got there, right? And what I
Mm,
love a lot about this show and what we can all relate to is first days doing anything, right? First
mm,
days going to school, first days if you moved, first
mhm.
days just your first job, right?
Yeah.
What is it like? And like I said, you said Cal Arts. That is the prestigious name of all schools when it comes to animation. Like, folks like Gendy, Tartakovsky, Samurai Jack and
Mm,
Dexter's Lab, Craig McCracken, Robert Setti. You've got these amazing people that have come out of this program. And it's a lot of it has to do with the level of teachers that they put in there. Like you guys are training, you guys get the best, and then the best are training the up and comings. Then those up and comings become the best. And it's just like you guys, it's like a baton race, right? It's like a triathlon or
yeah.
whatever it is, where they hand it off. And it's like the next person is going to take animation further and further and further. Now, with all of that being said, that was a long-winded way of me asking what is it like for you in particular to walk into that school? You already went to that school as a student, right? You were already a
No, I
student.
didn't. No,
Oh,
it
so
was
you
my
didn't go
first
to Cal
time. No,
Arts.
I had no
So
idea.
you
So it
probably
was,
have the same mystique that I have, right? Like, ooh,
yeah,
what are they
yeah.
teaching in there, right? So what was it like for you? The people, the nine old men taught there. Every big great from
Mhm.
UPA taught there. Like I said, Gendy and Craig, folks like that came from there. So what was it like for Kat walking in there going, oh, fuck, did I make a mistake? What was it like for you?
Well, I mean, that's a lot like every first job, right? Anytime
Hmm.
you walk in on the first day on a job, and I think it doesn't matter so much who you are. This is a pretty universal human experience, and if you're not
Hmm.
having it, check your heart, check your humanity a second. Like maybe your confidence is a bit too much, but everybody feels
Yeah.
like when they walk in on the first day of job, like, oh my God, they're gonna
What did I
find out
do?
I don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right? They're going to find out any moment now. And you kind of, there's fake it till you make it. That mentality of just kind of mustering up courage. But it's not that has to be based in an understanding, not a delusion, but an understanding that actually you do know what you're doing. You do know what you're doing, and for the things that you don't know what you're doing yet, you can figure those out. That's something that can be solved over time, and giving yourself permission to just have the experience and be aware of what goes right and be aware of the mistakes and what goes wrong
Mhm.
and all of that and just kind of letting it all happen is part of it, but it's a little bit of a balancing act because certainly there's a lot of pressure to do well, there's a lot of nervousness, right? It's almost like I think I would equate it to a feeling a little bit similar to stage fright in the sense of like, oh, just before you go out and give a big presentation, your heart is pumping and your
Yeah.
blood is going. You're like, oh man, I need to pee for like the fifth time right now because it's, you're nervous, right? And you
Yeah.
you want to do a good job and you're, you are trying to be present and aware, and at the same time you're also present and aware of you watching yourself,
Hmm.
from somewhere outside your own head, ready to be judgmental
Hmm.
when the time comes. Um, so that feeling's there. And then walking into the school with a sense of, oh, I'm not here as a student, I'm here as a teacher, as some kind of authority is a really interesting thing to have that knowledge without necessarily feeling it yet. And it's a real warren of a school. It's a maze, right?
Hmm.
Like I had to learn how the path of how many turns to take and
The
which stairway to go
corridors.
down and all that to get to the room that I was teaching in. And that was a whole thing. And for the longest time, I only knew how to walk that one path. And if I had made a wrong turn, you could really get lost in that place. It's very much um like like spooky hospital vibes, actually.
Yeah.
Like very, yeah, very strange hallways and corridors that kind of go on and turn and twist in different directions. And if you do take some odd turns, you'll come out a door that's on a completely different side of the building than you would expect. Be like, how did I get
It
east? I
reminds me
started
of
north, and yeah,
Hogwarts.
yeah, it's very strange in that way. And so I went down to my classroom, and the even more distressing thing, aside from just being a first year teacher, right? And knowing that this is the weakest the class is ever going to be because it's the first time I've done it,
Yeah.
right? All of this is a proving ground. I hope that the content I've prepared runs the right length of time. I hope it's not way too much. I hope it's not way too little. I hope I can set the tone right and, kind of, you know, earn respect as needed and all of that. And one of the most distressing things about this whole experience is the room they had me teaching in was the fishbowl. The fishbowl is no longer existent because I don't know if you knew this, but there was a big flood in COVID and the whole
Hmm.
animation wing had to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
So this was before that happened and when the fishbowl still existed. It's got this black and white tile floor and they, do life drawing in it in this room and other things. It's this big open-ended room. And the thing is, it has no ceiling. It it is open to the
Hmm.
second floor and the third floor, upon which there are balconies that kind of surround this same space where students who are not in your class, who are third year students, who are fourth year students, like ready to graduate, can look in your class and see what you're doing. And they
That's
can judge
daunting.
you too. So not only do I, have to work with a group of second years, who are probably easier to please than, the older, more jaded types, right? But I've got
Hmm.
everybody else looking as well to judge and evaluate whether I'm doing a good job or not.
Did anybody
Um,
boo on your first day?
no,
Oh,
no, it actually went really well.
that's good.
And I was really glad in that I think I had gotten some very, very sound advice. Because this was another thing in prepping the class, right? Like over the whole summer, I was prepping the class and writing the syllabus and trying to decide, oh, what's the right order to present this information or these concepts? What's the right order to teach all this stuff so that it makes sense, so that one concept builds upon the next concept and builds up to the next concept and so forth. And I got a plan that I felt pretty good about. I thought this seems like it's going to work, and a lot of other planning of like, okay, if I'm running short, here's how I'm going to fill the time. If I'm running long, here's what I'm going to cut, you know, and managing that was all very good. Um, but it went well. It went
Yeah.
well, and I had prepped well, and I had again gotten some very good advice, and gotten some also very bad advice that I recognized as bad advice and knew to ignore. Um,
What was
so
that bad advice?
the bad advice was to go easy on them, and
Really?
I said no, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bad advice I got was go easy on them. They've got a lot of other classes and coursework to do, and uh, you know, don't make it too difficult. Don't expect much.
Hmm.
And there's elements of this that are true, right? They do have a lot of other work. They do have a lot of other coursework, and you do have to be mindful of balancing that and giving assignments that are not so epic in scope that they can't be done without balancing other coursework. That's very important. But to have low expectations is, I think, a death sentence for a
Yes.
class, because if you get in and I imagine it from everything I've done with this class has been trying to imagine it from the perspective of a
Hmm.
student. How is it like to take this class? Is this a good class to take? Because that's my uh, my test for whether I would like to take it as a student. If I was learning animation, would I feel like I got something useful out of this class? Would I feel like I had fun? Would I feel like it was worth the time and money to go and take this class? That was all my sort of guiding light for it. Um, and and I would feel like if I walked into a class and the teacher didn't care much and didn't expect much of me and made it way too easy, I'd be like, what am I paying for?
Yeah,
This
what
school
do
is
I
so
do? Why do
expensive.
I need to be here?
Exactly. Like, what's
Yeah.
the point? Right? You have to, I think, inspire some care for what you're doing
Hmm.
and also expect highly because these kids, again, their portfolios are amazing. They've done a lot of hard work already up to this point to get into this school. They know how to concentrate, they know how to do good work. And that's the thing to expect,
Hmm.
because I think also people tend to fall into the roles you expect them to. So you should always think the best of people. You should always expect the best from people because that's what we should all be striving to deliver to each other. And I think it brings out the best in people when you encourage them to do that and when you recognize it too, um, not just expect it, but see it when it's
Hmm.
happening. And that's a very important thing to do as well.
Absolutely, man. It's lead by example at its finest. One thing I wanted to circle back to that I thought was fascinating because I'd heard about the fishbowl, right? I've heard
Yeah.
about it, but I'd never really like got explained on like what it looked like, right? So when I'm imagining you walking in here, did you know about like, or did you just walk in and you go, oh shit, there's more?
I was warned beforehand. I was warned
Yeah.
beforehand that A, it wouldn't be a computer lab and that this was a bad thing in that they
Hmm.
wouldn't be able to be on computers while we worked. And then B, that it was the fishbowl and that this would be, open essentially to the public if they were on the second or the third story. And also, you could still hear it even if you're on the first story. You just can't see in unless you're above looking down. So
I
I'd
gotta
been
say,
warned,
it's
but and I thought, okay, I already said yes, so this is what we're doing. I'm gonna have to be okay with this.
one,
So
that's got to be daunting, but two, that is such a cool design when you think about it.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you can kind of like take a look into like history, like the past, if you will. Like, oh
yeah,
man, they're just starting their journey down there. I'm getting ready to like finish my journey here. So it's like looking back in time, if you will, you know.
yeah,
Um, I just think that's such a fascinating and cool little thing. It's just like animation is so collaborative. It's so open. There's like no
yeah.
borders whatsoever. And then that I hope do they have I know you said they had to rebuild it, but did they build something like that again? Because that's so
It
unique.
it is similar. So what it is right now is that space that was the fishbowl is just kind of opened up. It used to be like there was a wall running down kind of the middle of
Hmm.
it, and part was a room and part was a hallway down to an area called the Palace. So the Palace is still a room. It's kind of got a sort of garage door that makes it sound really cheap and janky, but it's like a rolling door that like
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't ever seen it work. I'm told it does. Um, that sections it off as its own room. And then the area that was the fishbowl is kind of just a commonplace like meeting
Hmm.
room, like a general student lounge. And then that still is open to the second and third
Yeah.
story where they have their cubicles and lockers and the student kitchen and all of that. And they can still look down on that space. So I can still stand in the same spot where I was first teaching, and it feels kind of similar. It's not
Hmm.
exactly the same, but I'm like, yeah, this is where I started.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. That's like I said, it's just like your mind always does like the craziest of things when it's trying to like conceptualize what something's going to be like, what something looks like, yada, yada, yada. So like, I don't even
Yeah.
want to Google a picture because I think my picture, I just like, I don't know, dude. It's like when you were explaining like how to, like you would take one path and if you went out one door, you would be on the opposite side of the building. Like the first thing I thought of was like Hogwarts. It's like they're
Yeah.
walking up the stairs and the stairs are always shifting and they go into this one room and they come out on the other side. You know, it's a magical place, it sounds
Well,
like.
I won't
Al
disabuse you of
Arts.
the notion because I think, that's a fair descriptor of the experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
magical. Um, with that being said, when you look back on, that first year, is there
Mhm.
anything that sticks out to you when you were teaching that first year, that first semester, that goes, man, I had this expectation and I blew that
Hmm.
expectation out of the water and I crushed. Like, proudest moment is really what I'm getting at. Is there one moment that sticks out that first year that's like your proudest moment of teaching?
I don't know about proudest moments. I think there are a lot of different moments. Again, like I don't know. There's not just
Yeah.
one. There's many. And when I look back on the first year, it was that I got a lot of thanks and a lot of good comments. And okay, there's maybe a couple other things in addition to that. One was, I don't know if it was all of them, but I know a good number of them had no idea it was my first year teaching. So
Hmm. That's
that was
cool.
a good sign. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
We got a
We
pro this time.
we did it.
Yeah.
That's great. It must have felt legit. So
Mhm.
that's a good thing. We can build on that. And then I think the other thing I heard is that yeah, people were listening in actually on that like people wanted to listen in, not
Yeah.
to just judge or I don't know, be critical, but there was some value in that, and some people were actually just checking it out. And I think that carried over to the next year, the second year teaching. I think, and I didn't always clock it because I'm supposed to kick them out when they do, but I think there were a couple people who were sneaking into the lab when I was
Yeah.
teaching and or hanging around after or wanting to ask questions, and that I think was a good sign and a moment where I felt like, oh, okay, that's like what I'm presenting here is valid and they're getting something useful out of it and they're feeling like it's so useful that they're telling each other of like you should come check this out and that was just I don't know there's nothing more validating than that and I suppose it continues to happen it continues to be the most validating thing is when students express that they feel the class was really worth it you know because again it's an expensive school it's really hard to get in they work really hard to be there and they work really hard all year on their films and also advancing their own art and their own skills. There's a lot of talent there and a lot of passion. And so to get the review of like, hey, this class was worth it is
That's all the validation
fantastic.
you need.
That's great. And also it's like it's the only validation I want to of like if it wasn't that way, I would step aside to let somebody else do it. You know, it's not only good to hear it, I think it's necessary, you
Yeah.
know, for me to take space uh in that place. I want to make sure that I am giving them the best I can and that it's enough to help them feel like they can move forward with this craft and learn it better and also use it as a tool to express themselves and kind of, you know, do it on their own terms, if that makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely does. And we'll be right back 1 second. And we're back. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that about that first semester, that first year of teaching. Now,
Yeah.
what are some of the things with that first year in the books? How long have you been doing it now?
Oh, about 8 years.
8 years, man.
Yeah.
So 8 years is such a long time to be doing anything. So is there some things that you still use that you might have used your first year, or is it completely changed as far as style goes?
It really hasn't completely changed. I was actually really proud of the plan I put together the
Hmm.
first year. Obviously, it wasn't as complete as I, you know, can could make it in subsequent years with more examples, more. Oh, by the way, this is my cat. Sorry, I got him when
Oh,
you.
do we hit that 47-minute mark?
I don't know, but when you had to let your dog out to pee, I thought, well, I'll bring my cat since we got to keep your streak running. So
What's his name?
his name is Gonzo.
Gonzo. Now, are we talking Muppets Gonzo? Are we talking Gonzo journalism? What are we talking?
No, we were talking Gonzo, like he's just nuts.
Yeah.
And when we first got him, he was really wild and running up and down the house and, you know, getting up on top of the fridge and stealing food out of people's mouths, like just wild and crazy.
Yeah.
So he's calmed down a lot since
Yeah.
in these years, but yeah, he's a good bad boy.
Yeah. I can imagine. I got 3 dogs and a cat, and the cat we call the governor because
Yeah.
well, her real name is Raven. When my oldest son, we've had her for I think 8 years, 7 years. She was shortly after we had the dogs.
Hmm.
And like his favorite show at the time was Teen Titans Go, and he
Hmm.
really liked the character Raven. He thought she was funny, right? So we get this cat that's like the only time we would see her is like she would like look out in the curtain when it was like really shadow, so she looked like Raven's character in Teen Titans Go. So that's how Raven got. But
Yeah.
whenever we would sit down and we would eat dinner, we had this like bench that was right next to the dinner table, and she would come and sit on the bench And then it was like a tennis match. She would watch, and then she would go and she would look back at my wife, and then she would look at me. So it was like she was lording over everybody. So that's kind of how she got the
Yeah.
governor. And then when we got the third dog at that time, she was the one that kept all the dogs in line. All she would have to do is like raise her little cat paw. She's got this little itty tiny head. She's got this big old belly, and she's like this long cat. She looks weird. She's very
Hmm.
geometrical in shapes, right? But she would just lift up her paw if they started doing something, if the dogs
Hmm.
were playing too rough, and then that's all she had to do was lift up that paw and the dogs stopped. So
I
she
know, yeah,
runs the
because there's a
house.
warning. It's a warning. You don't have
Yeah.
to do it if the warning is strong enough.
Yeah. She was like, just let me know. She's like, I'll bring the thunder, if you will. But yeah, so I always love seeing when the cats pop up. Now with your style staying pretty consistent these 8 years, is
Yeah.
there I always find this fun. Is there topics that you don't like to like kind of teach, but you kind of have to because it's very valid to, career path or them growing as an artist?
Um, no, I don't think I would put it that way. There's, I guess the topic that I don't like to teach, and I also don't teach is software. I don't cover
Hmm.
software at all in my class. People often ask me, I'm like, well, but yeah, do you teach in Harmony or do you teach in, Flash or they don't call it Flash anymore. It's changed names. But um, and and I don't care for that as much because there's not as much creativity that comes with that, or it's very mechanical and kind of
Hmm.
rote teaching software. Um, I don't. I just teach 2D animation, and whatever software they want to use is totally fine. If they want to use paper and pencil, that's totally fine, as long as it's hand drawn. That's the big requirement. Um, and as far as like, I don't know, every class is different and fun, and I think part of it is making sure that it stays fun for myself as well
Hmm.
and interesting. And getting the order of topics right is really important as well. That was, again, that's something I spent a long time thinking about that first summer and saying, well, what do I need to cover? Like, we're going to cover, like, say, the 12 basic principles of animation, but I don't cover them, you know, as the 12 basic principles of animation. I don't want to teach it, the way it's been done in other books or other places, because if you want to learn that way, you can just go to those
Read the
books or
book.
you can go
Yeah.
to those channels. That's fine, that exists. I need to do, you know, um, not anything completely different, because in a way we're all saying the same thing, but I need to do it in a way that I think makes the most sense, and because that'll give a new perspective to the same kinds of topics. So, for example, the first week is always timing and spacing. In addition to other like basic class intro stuff and going over the syllabus and
Hmm.
all of your first week shenanigans, we have to teach something useful the first class. If you don't teach something useful the first class, they know they're onto you, and they know it's a waste of time. You have to teach something useful. So we go deep into timing and spacing, which is, I think, the most fundamental concept, two concepts in animation. And they're linked. They're really kind of one concept together, because you don't really have an expression of either without thinking about both.
Hmm.
Um, and it's so, so, so important, because every single other thing you're going to talk about in terms of the craft of animation, you're going to talk about arcs or secondary action, or performance choices like acting and even lip sync and expressions and all of that. All of it is based on, can you make the thing move with believable weight, with believable solidity, and all of that sort of thing. So that's, I think, the big thing to start on, and that has always remained the same. And from there, we build upon more complicated topics. So arcs come next, and then thinking of timing and spacing in dimension. How does it change when we're thinking about like using space this way as opposed to just space like this way?
Yeah.
Um, and that's a whole different way to start thinking about how do you make things still feel like they have weight and velocity and dimension. And then we build on to more and more complicated topics until eventually we get to everybody's favorite thing, which is acting.
Hmm.
Finally, we get to make a character like act and move and think and breathe. Like, it's kind of a thing we're all building up to. But to do that successfully, you have to do, I think, a lot of other things very simply first and understand them well. So, yeah, I've been rambling a bit, but I think that's,
No, you're fine.
the structure of the class has stayed similarly. I've made little tweaks, like moved this topic a little earlier, that topic a little later, but a lot of it has just been fleshing it out with more examples. And one of the things I think is successful, and I think more people need to consider when they're teaching is show bad examples too.
Mhm.
Don't show them to rip down bad work. If you can, make the bad examples yourself so that nobody feels bad. But then make
Yeah.
the good example beside it and show them side by side and say, this is why this one doesn't work so well. This is why this one works much better. And it's essentially the same thing, but with slightly different choices. And because if you only show the good example, you can see that, I think, as a student say, well, that's all well and good, but I can't do it that well yet. And it takes seeing the bad example to understand why certain choices are better than other choices and to help make the distinction between just doing the work, like just doing a bunch of drawings, and then doing a bunch of drawings that make sense, that
Mhm.
are talking to each other and that understood what the drawing before was doing, that understand what the drawing after is going to do. Like that's so much of what animation is understanding the drawing you're doing, not in a vacuum, but in the whole of what does the whole action feel like? What is the whole expression of this when it plays out? What is my vision for how that should play and look? Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does, and then as it usually does, it raises more questions. Now, one of the things that I love hearing when like I said, whenever I have artists on, I always have a lot of whenever I have anybody on, I have a lot of fun. But artists in particular, because I just love what you guys do. Um, some of the best stories I've heard, especially from like the Disney guys, is what you were
Mm.
talking about, showing a good example, but showing a bad example, so they can go, oh, it can get like this, but we can make it look like a good example if we
Mhm.
just do these tweaks, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I love is when some of the Disney guys, they were talking, and I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it was Sandro Cluso, and I think it was
Mhm.
fuck, I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting the name, but it'll come to me later. It was the director for Brother Bear. I don't know why I can't remember his name
Oh,
right now. Aaron
Aaron Blaise?
Aaron Blaze. Thank you, thank you,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. He told a story as well. Aaron, I apologize. He's actually had my food. He's not too far from where I live.
Oh,
I'm
amazing.
down here. We've never been able to link up, physically yet. Hopefully one day. Um, but him and Sandro and a couple of the other Disney guys, they would say working with somebody like Glenn Keane or John Pomeroy,
Yeah.
right? They would go to them with like their scenes, and then they would have them like trace over, like, man, I'm just not getting something. And it was just
Yeah.
something cool about what you were talking about, like showing them a side by side so they know it can be this
Yeah.
bad, but you can do something this good with it if you just do these things. Did you have anybody in
Mhm.
particular in your career that you might have taken some drawings to and go, hey man, can you just trace over these or show me what I'm doing wrong or show me what you would
Oh,
do in this situation?
yeah, I mean, even most recently, I think on Moon Girl and
Mhm.
Devil Dinosaur, which I think has some of my best work because it's the most recent
Yeah.
work, and I feel like I did a pretty good job on that show. But I
Hmm.
could still always go to Jose, who was the Jose Lopez, the character art director on
Hmm.
that show, and that guy can draw better than anybody I know in the whole
Yeah.
world. So, no, like seriously, such good drawings. And when I
Hmm.
say good drawings, I don't mean like just structurally sound or like technically good. They're good designs too. Like they're
Hmm.
pushed and they're exaggerated and they're interesting and they're graphic in ways. And by graphic I mean like graphic design, like they're pushing shape language
Hmm.
um and design shapes. And they're just so good. And so anytime I was doing a scene and I would take my key poses to him and say, hey, what do you think?
Take a
And
look.
he'd
Yeah.
always he'd always have thoughts. And then like my proudest moments were sometimes he would say, this drawing's okay. Like, all right.
It's Bob's
But
Burgers is just okay
but oh
again.
my God, it's okay. I love it. But also like I was never loath to receive notes because anything he did would always push something a little bit harder, or just
Hmm.
make it a little bit stronger. And it was a really cool thing to see the way he thought about it or what he would focus on. And that was a wonderful working relationship. And I think, that show in general had a totally wonderful camaraderie and collaborative spirit across every season of the show. It started as a dream, it ended as a dream. Like really, really, I can't say enough things about nice things about that crew and that show. Um, but he was always so friendly. It was never ever a scary thing. It was
Hmm.
always an encouraging thing. So I really appreciated that about him, and that I'm sure, he knew he could draw better than I could, but he never made me feel bad for taking his drawings to him. It was only ever a really great fun time. And and then I think like later in that season I got to repay the favor because he'd always kind of wanted to animate in the show, but
Hmm.
he'd never gotten to animate. And we had some time at the end of the season and said, Jose, you should take on these scenes. I'll help
Yeah.
you do them. And yeah, and I got to walk him through how to animate and how to make his animation better using the drawings he wanted to do. And that was a really fun
Full
switch where I
circle
got
moment.
to, yeah, it was lovely. But and that wasn't the only example. Like there were people in DuckTales I could go to too for drawing inspiration and guidance and all that. But
Yeah, but that one
and
stuck out the most to you. That's the first one you thought
yeah,
about
just
right
because I
there.
think, yeah, well, it's also the most recent, but I think also it was like the strongest drawers I ever got, where every
Mhm.
time I was like, damn, that's good.
Yeah.
How cool is this going to be now that I have, that little extra bit to incorporate? It's really nice. So,
Have you
yeah.
gotten to tell him? Have you gotten to tell him that?
Oh yeah, I tell him
Okay,
that constantly. I still tell
that's
him
good.
that. We're not even
That's
on that
good.
show anymore. I tell him that. Yeah.
That's it's
It
something.
was great.
It's something special about that. Like knowing that what you did helped somebody or they appreciated it. I mean, I'll get text messages from time to time from guys that have worked for me in the
Yeah.
restaurants, and then I'll get thank yous a lot, and it's just like, dude, I'm gonna be real honest. I didn't think you were listening to half the shit I was trying to tell you. He was like, no, he was like, you were always very, very patient. When it comes to things like food, I'm very, very patient because I think it's something that everybody should know how to do. Anthony Bourdain said this. It was either I think it was Anthony Bourdain. He had said it's like everybody should know how to make some eggs. Everybody should know how to make like a basic sauce. That way you know how to cook for yourself, right? So
Yeah.
getting those messages from people mean a lot. And that's why I do this show. I go out of my way to tell you guys, man, I really love what you guys do. And somebody hearing that, like the guy you were just talking about for the character design, the director, it's something that I think more people should do. They should tell them, or if they look up to somebody, go, hey man, I really, what you did here, fuck, that touched me in such a great way. You know what I mean? Because that's what you guys do for a
Yeah.
living. You guys are eliciting feelings, whether it's happiness,
I
sadness, hatred for a character.
I 100% agree with you. And that's not to say like you owe it to those people. That's not the right thing. Like if I help someone out, I don't expect a thank you. I don't
Hmm.
expect, I don't expect thank yous from the kids who take the class or anything. Like I don't, you do it for the sake of helping somebody else and
Yes.
giving the good thing or you sharing the information. And that alone is enough. If nothing else happens beyond the interaction, you can say, well, I've put that out into the world. I've, given what I can, and that is
Hmm.
fine, done deal. For myself, when I notice good art happening, or when I notice something just that is in need of appreciation, I think it's always a good idea to take the time and let that person or let that entity or whoever it is know, great job on that. This is amazing. This made my day. This was really good. Or I saw how much skill this took, or how hard you worked on that, or any of that. Like always, I think taking a moment to share that. Again, it's not that you owe it, but it puts something good into the world.
Hmm.
And I know, when you receive something like that, uh, you know, it's it has an amazing effect.
It's special.
It's yeah, and you don't always know what it's going to be, but I think it's almost never bad. It's only just different
No.
weird degrees of good and magical. So, it's again, you do it not because it's something that somebody's owed, but because voicing your appreciation out loud is something that puts good into the world. Whereas if you just keep it in your own head, that's still nice that you experienced it, but it's staying all in here. You should be putting that appreciation for whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're thankful for, out there, so that the people who are making it or doing it or responsible for it know. Yeah.
That what I did mattered. That's what we're all striving for, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, or even just what I did was noticed. Like
Hmm.
sometimes it can be that small, and it can be, I think, very validating to hear.
That it can. It can make your
Yeah.
day. You could have been having the shittiest day in the world, man. You could have got in an argument with your wife, your significant other. You could have fucking, I don't know, yelled at your kid when you should have gave him a hug, something along those lines. You're just having a bad day, and somebody goes, "Hey, man, I like what you do." Changes the complete perspective of how that day is going to end. Um,
Mhm.
I used to do this segment back in the day whenever we were starting to wrap up. I'd throw out 5 or 6 questions, first thing that comes to
Mhm.
your mind. So we haven't done this one in a while, and I won't give you all 5 of those questions, but we're going to take a couple of them.
Okay.
Uh, since you teach, man, there's my bookshelf back here. I've got so many art of books because I love, like I said, I love what you guys
Yeah.
do. I wanted to be an artist when I was younger until I realized, like, oh shit, they throw away a lot of drawings. I've got this very cute, sappy story. It's like I go to Universal when I'm younger, and this is when they were kind of still doing like a little bit of the animation out here. It was all moving to California, anyways. So I think it was just like one of
Yeah.
those things where people go out there and they show you what's coming next. And it was SpongeBob SquarePants. I hadn't released yet, right? So I'm out there
Yeah.
and they're doing like drawings and stuff like that, just trying to get people, it was like their advertisement hyped for this new show that was coming out. And I remember seeing this one artist, he had a trash bag or a trash can full of like balled up pieces of paper because he kept throwing drawing and drawing and drawing away. And I remember going like hot and heavy in a drawing right now. And I go, hey, why is he doing that? And I remember the lady saying something to the effect of like, oh, if it's not, correct, he has to start over. And I go, well, shit. And I'm like I said, I'm a little kid when I say this, but I go, my mom hangs up all of my drawings, so I don't think I could animate. I was like, I couldn't throw all of those drawings away, right? And
Mhm.
it wasn't until a couple, not a couple years later, a long time later, I have this character designer on. His name is Andy Bialk, and he's talking about a lot
Oh
of the
yeah.
same similar
He
things that
teaches at
we're talking
CalArts
about.
too.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
he was one of the cool. He was
Yeah.
in a Nirvana video when he was younger.
No, I didn't.
Yes, he's
I
in the
didn't know that.
scene where the kids are skateboarding and moshing. You see Andy Pialk in there. So we talked about that.
Oh,
We got to talk about the
nice.
moment, him, hanging out there on set and everything like that. Dude's
Oh, that's
crazy
cool.
life, man. He has some really cool stories
Yeah.
about early Cartoon Network days.
Oh,
Um,
I'm certain he does. Yeah.
but it's some good. Whenever I get the old school Cartoon Network guys on, I was like, "Look, we're gonna record this. I want you to tell me some secrets, some cool stuff."
Yeah.
I was like, "Just make sure that we can like keep it in there, and you guys don't get in trouble." I've heard some of the coolest stories about the Cartoon Network days, especially in those early to mid '90s when Cartoon Network was really
Yeah.
getting off the ground. They're some of my favorite stories. But Andy had thrown out there, and I'm gonna butcher how he said it, so I'm gonna try to do it a little
Mm.
eloquently. But he's like with Instagram and social media, he was like a lot of people will post their art in there, but they show the final picture. And this is when I think he was just in the middle of teaching the class when we had talked. But he's like, I think it's very important for people to see the 10 drawings that you threw away and the 10 drawings
Yeah.
you didn't post because that shows you, he's like, if anything, they should show a progression of where you started and kind of how you finished. So you can see that it's not just a one shot, one take, or one take, one shot, and that's what you put up there. It's like, it takes time
Right.
for this. You got to throw away 10,000 drawings, I think is what he said before you get good.
Hmm. No, that's true. And I think you even have to throw out more. I still have to throw out drawings.
Yeah.
Like that happens all the time. And it is something that you don't see on the final screen. Like you
hmm
see what errors, and sometimes it's great work, and sometimes it's like, well, the deadline hit, and that's what we got.
Yeah, we had to get it
Um,
through.
but you don't see the roughs or the stuff you need to explore and try and find the scene and find the poses and all that. And my roughs start very rough, and I show those in my class too. I'm like, look, we're not committed to these drawings. These drawings are
Yeah.
not trying to be pretty. They're not trying to be on model. They're not for looking at. They are for figuring out the timing, figuring out the motion,
hmm
and kind of just understanding where I'm going with timing and spacing and posing and body mechanics and all of the different components that you kind of have to juggle in your head simultaneously. And from there, once that's figured out, I can start then thinking about, okay, now I can start, you know, understanding this drawing and figuring out the design of it and the solidity of it and that sort of thing. And that's okay. And also different people work different ways as well, and
hmm
that's all valid. But I think, yeah, it's very important to show that, yeah, just because your work starts rough doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can kind of prioritize different things at different times. And for me, these things live in different places. Drawing is almost a separate skill from animating.
hmm
Um, they both inform each other. They're both
Yeah.
helpful. Hopefully, if you're an animator, you can say you can do both.
hmm
Um, but it's using a different part of the brain, I think, than figuring out timing and acting and movement. And so when I'm making those choices, I need to not worry about the drawing as much as how is everything's working together in terms of posing and storytelling and spacing.
Yeah. Beautifully put, man. Now, so the questions that we used to ask, and I'm glad you're a teacher now because I think this can go a little bit further as well. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, we're going to take Ollie's. Oh, why am I not remembering these names right now? Um, the Bible for
Ollie
animation.
Johnston,
It's
Frank
Ollie
Thomas, Ollie
Johnston and Frank
Johnston.
Thomas. Yes, it's
Yeah,
the
you got it.
was it the Illusions of Life? Am I
Yeah,
my butcher? Okay, like
you got
for
it.
whatever
You got
reason,
it.
it's just like it's there. I see it, but it's like a cloud. Every time I try to go to grab it, it just
Because
disappears.
it's
But
illusionary. It's
it's
elusive.
the illusion of life, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen. This is
yeah.
art with words. But so I would always ask people, especially in the earlier episodes, hey, what's two books that you would recommend that every fan of animation, everybody that's working in animation should have on their shelves, man? But with you being a teacher as well,
Yeah.
you have to probably skim or not skim through. You have to read through a lot of stuff already. So are there two books in your personal opinion that you think anybody that works in animation or is a fan of animation should have on their bookshelves?
Yeah, but they're going to be really boring answers. So sorry, I'll
That's
try and
okay.
make it quick because it's the basic answer. It's the animator
Yeah.
survival kit. That's
Yeah.
everybody's answer, or like many people's top answer. I could try and be cheeky and say, oh, this obscure poll. I'm like, no,
Hmm.
it's really good. It's really, really good. And the reason why it's good is not even that Richard Williams is such a great animator. I actually don't always love his work. Hot take. Um, but
I love me some
uh,
Roger
it, it kind
Rabbit
of
though.
it depends. It depends on the scene and it depends on
Hmm.
what's going on. I think he got really, really excellent in his later years, but some of the earlier stuff was a little bit swimmy, a little bit floaty. And it's because it's on lens.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's another thing. Anyway, that book is really, really excellent. And one of the things that makes it excellent is he came into animation a little bit later. He already had draftsmanship skills and fine art skills, and he knew how to draw and all of that, but he didn't have a handle on animation. He really, really, really wanted to learn and to understand and to take that knowledge and just sort of filter it through and make and explain it for how to do it, from the
Hmm.
perspective of someone who was learning and didn't immediately know how to do it. And so this is a collection of lessons, and I think it's really, really clear and excellent that way. It's very good at explaining technique and why certain things work the way that they do. Some other books I would recommend, and this is for people who want to be animators or want to learn about the craft of animation, how to do it, is Eric Goldberg's book, Cartoon Crash Course. It's simple, it's readable, it's digestible, it's clear. The examples are amazing. I think in my mind, it replaces the Preston Blair book. It teaches
Hmm.
everything in that book and more and better, I think. So his would be, I think, another excellent choice. And then the Walt Stanfield, Stanfield? Stanfield Drawn to Life series just got some excellent drawings and excellent lessons and just about art and animation and composition in general that are really strong. So sorry that was too long an answer, but
No, no, no. It's never too long.
they're
Like I said,
classics. They're good.
there's a lot of people that always write in that want to pick you guys' brains on things that inspire you, but also help you, grow as an animator and an artist. Now, you said the name twice, so I want to tell you my Eric Goldberg story really quick. And
Oh, sure.
I've never had the guy on, but this is it'll lead to my question here in a second, but this guy is so special, right? Eric Goldberg. You remember when
Mhm.
they were doing that? I think it was like a six-part little series that they did a couple years ago, where they took was it Andres as well, and they gave him a character to draw, and then they just did this class. Like, and Eric was on there, and he did the genie. Like I said,
Yeah.
this is like a six-part series not too long ago on Disney Plus. I was so enthralled by what Eric was doing. Like I said, back in the day, I wanted to be an anime. I wanted to do what you guys do. I loved
Yeah.
drawing. And this guy hit a
There's still
chord
time.
with
Come
me.
on over.
Oh, there is still there's
You
time, but
know,
it's just like, all right, what do I got to
it's never
sacrifice,
too
right?
late.
It's never too
Sure.
late. But it's this guy is so special. He made me feel like a kid, like that I wanted to
Hmm.
draw. Like I'm watching him draw the genie, and it is the most effortless like movements I've ever seen in
Oh
my
yeah.
life. And then he made me pause that. I go up to what is it? Hobby Lobby, I think was the only like art supply store that I could
Hmm.
go to. I bought a drawing pad, a pack of pencils, and I went home and I just drew with Eric like he was Bob Ross for 20 minutes.
Oh,
And it looked like shit. Don't get me wrong. I did
this
not
this
save
is
it
funny, but this is
whatsoever. But it was just something that like, and at that point I hadn't drawn in maybe like like I'll go through phases where it's like, because my
yeah.
oldest, he loves to draw. So I'll go through phases where he'll draw something, he's really big into anime. So he loves drawing like the one, I don't know if you're a One Piece fan, but he likes drawing the wanted posters for like One Piece when they get like new bounties and stuff like that because they're pirates, you know.
Yeah.
So I would have phases where I would just like I'd see him draw. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go dust out one of my books, and then I'll draw with him for a little bit, and I'll stick with it for a couple months, and then it's just like I get busy with work, the kids, yada yada yada, you know. But it was just for like that split moment. He made me want to like get back in contact with my inner kid, you know, my inner child. Right? That's why my
Yeah.
room looks like this with the lights and with the drawings on the back of the wall. It's because I come here to talk cartoons and talk things that I grew up
Yeah.
with. And what better way to get in that mindset of joyful and just having fun than to act like your youthful self, your kid-like self again, right? You know,
Yeah.
so that's my Eric Goldberg story. Now you brought his name up twice. Now this
Mhm.
next question is going to lead into all of this. So I have to assume both of these guys, both Eric and James, are probably on your Mount Rushmore. But
Mhm.
when you have Mount Rushmore of artists, you know, so you get four people. Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Well, I don't have a Mount Rushmore. I don't care for that monument as an example, but I have a list of greats or like people I'm definitely um inspired by. Again, this is going to be a very animator's
That's
answer.
fine.
It has to be Milt Kahl. It has to
Yeah.
be Milt Kahl. You know, right up at the top. But also up there, yeah, for more modern or next generation artists, James Baxter,
Hmm.
Eric Goldberg, they're also excellent. Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston both, I think, had some amazing scenes that, you know, are very touching and sentimental and sweet without being saccharine, without being, you know, going to a place that feels inauthentic or,
Hmm.
you know, overly much. And I really, I really admire all their work. And the reason why we all go to Milt Call is because it's kind of just perfection achieved in
Hmm.
animation. When I say perfection, it's not like robotic, right? It's perfect in that it's also expressive and it's also designerly, and the drawings are
Yes.
solid and they're interesting and they're pushed and the acting and the weight, like everything is just unbelievably good. And to think that this was done, you know, by a human being
Yeah.
and it has to be done by a human being. Like that's the joy of it too, is like it's I don't know how to put it into words, but it's an absolutely awe-inspiring
Hmm.
thing to see. And I feel I appreciate it more than ever now because you know, try as I might, I'm not that good. I am not James Baxter. I'm not Eric Goldberg. I'm not Milt Kahl, certainly. Um, and and that's okay. You know, not everybody gets to be the best in the world. But
Hmm.
when you see someone do the craft that well at that high a degree of control and creativity and draftsmanship and all of the, you know, different skills that pour into it, how can you not be moved and impressed at what they're expressing? You know, it's absolutely incredible. And I, you know, go through and watch those scenes again. I go back and watch the old Disney movies now and then, or certain sequences or scenes, and every time I'm just moved. And it's not even what's happening in the movie. It's not the movie itself. Like the movie can be great or it can be mid or
Hmm.
less or whatever. But like when you see that that craftsmanship on the screen, it's
That
there's
Dumbo moment.
nothing
That
we
Bob's moment.
well, for me it's like I think the ones I go to are like a lot of the uh what's the era? I'm blanking on the era, the Xerox era.
Oh,
Sword in the
101
Stone.
Dalmatians.
Yeah, Sword in the Stone, 101 Dalmatians, Jungle Book has
Hmm.
some of the best animation just
That's my favorite.
ever, just
Yeah.
ever. It's so good. It's
Hmm.
so insanely good. And
So good
I
they
don't know.
reused it for Robin Hood.
Yeah, and it's good in Robin Hood too. I don't
Hmm.
mind it there either. I'll watch that as well. But it's, you know, it blows my mind every time, and it's really, really cool.
There is something, I don't know how it got into my algorithm other than probably I was just looking something up, but there is something special about knowing that somebody, a person, right,
Yeah.
did that with their hand. It came down from their
Yeah.
brain, it went down their arm, and it ended up on paper.
And
You
you
know,
can
when you're
see it in the
talking,
line too. This is why drawings are
dude,
so goddamn cool.
it is so
Like it's
cool.
so Yes.
Seeing somebody hit like a 101 Dalmatians, you can see a
Hmm.
lot of like the rough underneath, right? And it
Yeah,
wasn't
and I love
something that I
it.
ever caught. Well, it wasn't something I ever caught until I started doing this
Yeah.
show and people talking about it. But just knowing that a human being did that and they elicited something out of a fictitious character that has no business, gripping me the way it gripped me. It's just a sign of just how great that person is at their craft. And
Yeah.
when you're talking about I think you mentioned like three or four of the nine old men. I mean, Mark Davis has always been my favorite out of all of them.
Hmm.
There's something about Cruella that is one of just like the coolest villains in the world. How she
Hmm.
moves through the spaces. She is like chaos embodiment, or embodied chaos, whatever you want to call that. It's just really
Pure
cool
evil.
seeing that
Yeah.
pure fucking, who kills puppies other than her?
To
Just
make one coat. One coat.
one coat and with as tall as she was, she probably wouldn't
Yeah.
even get like a real coat. But like I think of things like the
Yeah.
like Mark Davis. But I was scrolling through Instagram one day and it was Akira. There's the
Hmm.
clip that's been going around where it's like the cityscape. So you see the guy, he's painting on the cell. So he's got his hand. So it's a night shot, it's buildings and he's going like every other window. It's got lights on or it's
Hmm.
got something in there. But just like the
Yeah.
tactile feeling, like I would love to know like what did it smell like in that room? What did it look like? What was like the
Yeah.
feels? Like what was the vibe? To be a fly on the wall during the Nine Old Men's the run for all of those movies from Bambi all the way on and just seeing shit like that go on, it's so fascinating.
Well, yeah, okay. So two things this has spurred in my mind that I'd love to talk about. But being a fly on the wall in Milk Call's room, probably not fun because that was an angry guy, I think. He was a little bit cantankerous as the stories go. And maybe it's because he knew it was the best and he was
Yeah.
impatient with, anything less. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I've heard, interviews, and one of the things I find really interesting about him and also validating because I had a similar feeling about this. And then I heard him said it. I'm like, that's why I know it's right because Mill said it. And it's about, reference in animation,
Hmm.
using reference in animation, which there's a lot of, shooting reference for animation right now. And it's good. It's fine. It's not necessarily bad, but, it's it should never be used as a crutch. If you're shooting reference, you're shooting to kind of study and understand, and you as the animator should be pushing away from that reference, or like, you shouldn't be copying or rotoscoping
Hmm.
that. If you've done that, you've done a disservice because it shows you did not take the time to understand what you're doing. You also
What was
didn't
going
take the
on?
time to express something better than what the reference could give you. The whole point, of having it is to kind of help slow things down or see, certain things you might not be able to catch, watching them in real time. But the real goal, when you're animating, is to sit down and understand what you're doing and make creative choices to achieve that goal. And that's something I think is um, very difficult to do. Like Milt could do it because he was so good, but it's,
Hmm.
easy for you to say, right? What about the rest of us? Well, we have to try and, reach that high level. But I think that is the ultimate goal because, having the freedom to do what you want via understanding as opposed to via having the right reference to copy gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. If you're stuck and, relying on the reference too much, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to understand, and you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to make creative choices. And the other thing I thought that I wanted to speak on regarding drawing, like the love of drawing and seeing those drawings that sort of, and seeing the underline and the
Hmm.
underdrawing in those cells, there's something really magical about that. And I think part of it, if I can, I'll try and put it into words, and this may or may not come out clear. You can let me know.
Oh,
Um,
I've said some unclear shit the entire chat we've been talking,
Well,
so it's cool.
okay, then it's my turn if that's so. But one of the reasons why I think 2D animation, and particularly hand-drawn 2D animation, is so cool is because you are connected directly to the artwork
Hmm.
that the artist or the animator is choosing to put on screen. It's not glossed over as much. It's very bare bones, and you can see, yes, that there's a human being making it, that there's a human process behind it, and yet, even knowing that, even having it as obvious as right in front of your eyes, you still believe in it as another
Hmm.
entity that has life. And this is also, fundamentally different than I think what 3D animation can offer. Though it has some interesting offerings, it's still a medium worth exploring. It's capable of making good art too. And also fundamentally different from what, say, rigged 2D animation can offer, that
Mhm.
sort of puppety symbol-based animation, is the direct connection to the artwork on the screen. And I'll speak to it, via my experience of having done some work in symbol animation or like sort of puppet animation, moving stuff around. It was fun. I was still an animator. I was still making creative choices. We still made some good animation that way. However, the process is so completely different because when you are posing pieces or posing a rig, as in like, you might do with a piece of 3D software, there's a lot of elements to the software and to that process that are in between you and the art. You
Mhm.
have to go through a lot of different steps to come up with the final frames. That those steps are not necessarily interconnected with one another, so you often get poses that are really stiff, or you have to work very hard to make them not stiff poses. There's just a lot of layers of process between you and the artwork. Whereas with an actual hand-drawn character where you do the line and it's on the page. What you see is what you get, right? It is a
Yeah.
direct line from the pencil to the page, and what you put down is what they see. And there's nothing more direct than that. And there's, I think, also nothing more impactful than that when you see it on screen because again, it's not cleaned up. It's not going through other processes. It's very, very pure. And that's, I think, for me, where a lot of the magic is not just seeing the animation, not just believing in the animation, but seeing the artist behind the
Hmm.
animation and being absolutely impressed and gobsmacked by what they can do.
Oh, wholeheartedly agree. There, like I said, it's hard to put into words, you know? I mean, we could both sit here and probably think about all the words we could possibly put to what you're trying to explain, and it's just like at the end of the day, it's fucking awe-inspiring. It's like just looking at it, it just goes like
Yeah,
that can't even be real sometimes. Like you look at it and you just watch it move and watch it interact in that space in that world. You're just like,
yeah,
how is this real? You know what I mean? It just seems like
yeah.
it's fake, you know? Um, with that being said, is there one moment from Milt that you saw on the big screen or on your TV at home that he worked on that like that was the moment it made you a Milt Call fan?
I don't know, man. Again, you're asking me like, is there one moment? Is there one this? Is there one that? And I don't know that there is. I don't know that there is. And I'm also like so super conscious and worried of like, oh, I don't want to accidentally say a Frank or Ollie moment. I want to be really sure.
Well, what if
But like,
what was there a
I
moment that like changed your perception on what animation could be through Milt? Is that if that's an
there,
easier
there were
question?
many, but there's to answer your question and to have, an actual answer to your question, I think one of the times and places where I began appreciating Milt more as a professional rather than an avid student was when I went to work on DuckTales.
Hmm.
And because DuckTales was referencing in their design a blend of Carl Barks's drawing for the ducks, but also Milt Kahl's Professor Von Drake.
Hmm.
And so seeing those drawings, obviously our designs are neither of those. They're sort of a blend and amalgamation and also a simplification for TV animation and, a sort of they're a different thing entirely, but that is inspired by those two things. But in looking at the inspiration, you see Milk Call's Professor Von Drake drawings, and you go, damn, that's so good.
Yeah, he
All of
crushed
these are
it.
so good. He can draw this duck like all these different head turns at these weird angles that are so hard to do with these beaks and that all and it looks anatomically sound, even though it's, a totally weird cartoon design, and the structure is great and the acting is great and the expressions are great, and yet it also looks so simple too. It's not like a
Hmm.
complicated drawing. It's just a really perfect one.
Hmm.
And it's so beautiful. It looks like he didn't even try.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did, but when you can make something like that look so effortless, that is amazing. And so I think that working on that show gave me an even higher degree of appreciation for his draftsmanship and the designerliness in his drawings too. So good.
He made you believe, like Eric Goldberg made me believe I could draw the genie after not drawing for multiple years. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Eric
Just
Eric
watching
Goldberg
his
also
artwork.
makes it look easy, right?
Yeah. It's
And
it's
maybe
just
maybe it is easy for Eric Goldberg. I don't know. He makes it so look so easy. I might believe it really might be that way for him, but
well,
um
here's another one I'll butcher, but it's like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee said at one point in time, in some form or fashion, that he's not afraid of that person that knows 10,000 kicks. He's afraid of that person that's thrown that one kick 10,000 times. So it's that 10,000 hour rule, essentially,
mm,
right? So you see it how many hours and hours and hours those guys back then put in, and it's just like I don't want to say the field of animation was a lot smaller, but it is a lot smaller back then than it is now, just because it was a budding. Like by the time they were doing the Snow Whites and the Cinderellas and the Dumbos. I mean, animation technically, what, 1925 is when,
yeah.
what was it? Shit, the dinosaur. God damn it. Betty?
The
What's it?
dinosaur. Wait, Gertie
Yeah.
the dinosaur? Are we talking about that?
Gertie.
I
Thank you.
think that
Yeah.
was 19 I think that was earlier. I want to say
1919,
1911.
1925. Well,
Wait,
really?
hold on. Am I early? I don't know. It was early
I haven't read,
1900s.
I haven't read of Mice
God, I
and
gotta look
Magic
it
in
up now.
quite
I'm
some
gonna
time.
know.
For some reason, 1925 was just sticking out, but either way, is very new,
I gotta know
you know?
now. 1914, we're both wrong. It's in the middle. Split the difference.
Yeah, but you got the closest without going over. So Price is Right rules. You won on this
Oh,
one.
okay.
So, um, but yeah, like I said, it's just something like crazy. It's like 20 years. Very small industry. So it's kind of like it was only room for the strongest of the artists. And during that time as well, you got the union strikes.
Hmm.
Are you a big reader outside of like outside of school and stuff like that? Do you like to read and stuff?
I love to read.
Have
Yeah.
you Have you read the Disney Revolt book by Jake? Oh shit, I can't
No,
remember
I
his
have
name.
not.
Dude, it is one of the greatest books on. Like it was my favorite. Like the Moose That Roared, the Jay Ward story, or the Jay
Yeah.
Ward book is like my favorite book on animation. But this one, it goes through. Oh man, Art Babbitt, his whole strike against Disney. It goes
Yeah.
through that whole inner turmoil with Walt and the Red Scare communism stuff and this and the that's. It is one of the most detailed. I'll take a picture of it and send it
That
to
sounds
you.
like an interesting
Uh,
thing for our times to read down to.
oh, it is so damn cool. And the author
Shit.
that wrote it,
Okay.
he came on way back in the day. I apologize for like I said, ladies and gentlemen, don't blame it on my heart, blame it on the weed. I can't remember some names sometimes, but. It's a fantastic book, and at Disney Revolt, my book, I'm pretty sure I still got I'll find it, like I said, take a picture and send it to you. But like when I talked to him, I was
Hmm.
flipping through the book, and it looked like I was a serial killer because it was like, how like they have those pictures with like the lines are drawn to every possible conclusion. Like I had
Hmm. Hmm.
posted notes, I had shit highlighted, I had stuff folded over. I wanted to ask him all these questions, and I realized like I can't keep this dude for like 6 hours to talk to
Yeah.
him about his book. But like I said, one of the coolest books, one of the coolest guests I've had on. But check that one out when you get a chance. The Disney Revolt, like I said, the Union Strike story is a fantastic book.
Yeah.
As we wrap down, or excuse me, as we wind down, I love asking this question last because like I feel
Hmm.
like it gives you guys pause for the cause and you get to think about like everything you've done from the beginning of your career to where you're at
Hmm.
now. But if you were to say, hey, I've done enough right now and hang up your pencil or put your pencils away, right, and you're gonna go home and relax, if you could summarize your experience or your time, your journey with an animation, is there a phrase, is there a sentence, is there a word that comes to mind when you think about everything you've done and everything you've accomplished?
But firstly, you can't make me commit to one word. I'm
I've
too
noticed
wordy for that. I
I've tried getting
will
one
not
word
do it.
answers.
I'm sorry, sir. I just will not play by that rule. I'm gonna go off on one more long-winded answer if I
Oh, that's
can.
perfectly fine.
But I'm not hanging out my pencil for anything.
Yeah, good.
You can't make me quit.
Right
I
on.
will not do it. And to sum it up, and it's sort of an amalgamation of what I've learned from being in the industry and in, different workplaces, and what I've learned from teaching at Cal Arts, and also trying to consolidate the information in my
Mhm.
brain and disseminate it in a way that makes sense to other brains, hopefully. Um, it's that this art form is really special and really beautiful and really personal, and it takes a tremendous amount of time and skill to get good at. And that should not be a deterrent for anyone who wants to learn it. I think there's this uh, there's this misconception that a lot of adults have. I think our parents' generation and probably some of our generation too, and maybe, I hope not, I hope we can kill this myth because it needs to die. And the myth is that you either are good at drawing or you aren't. You're born with
Hmm.
some innate talent, and either you have the gift or you don't. And I just don't think that's true. That you can learn to draw, and anyone can learn to draw at any age because it is a learnable skill. There are techniques you can adopt. There are ways you can learn how to see and then translate that to hand-eye coordination with your hand in the page. And then there's other art concepts that sound quite esoteric at first. You get into words that are really scary and weird, like appeal. What does that mean? Energy. What does that mean? These
Yeah.
are crazy, like cultish words. This must not be true. This can't be real. But the more time you spend steeped in it, you kind of see how these concepts apply across different pieces of art and how to use them and how they are concrete concepts that are understandable if you expose yourself to enough art. So it's all a very learnable skill. So sorry again, I told you it would be a rambling answer.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
I I would hope that anybody who's genuinely interested in doing it not be afraid to try it out and
Hmm.
not be afraid of failure and understand that that's a huge part of it. That just because you don't do the drawings you want right away doesn't mean that you can't refine them or learn how to do better as you go. You kind of just have to be okay with doing bad drawings or doing bad animation for a while. And I think even at a professional level, even after doing it for many years, there are times when I still find it really difficult to do certain kinds of drawings or to do certain kinds of scenes or animation. And I trust myself to get there eventually now. I trust I will be able to solve any problem eventually, but it doesn't mean that it's not without its difficult moments where there's
Hmm.
struggle in trying to get it right. I think that's a really normal part of the process, and it's an interesting part of the process too. That's something that should be embraced. And also, whether or not you go on that journey for yourself in exploring your own creativity and what you want to make and what you want to express, um, be open to appreciating it. And when you see animation, understand that that has taken a huge amount of time and labor to produce. I know initially when I was working on Bob's Burgers and also on DuckTales and also on Moon Girl, virtually any time in my career, I'll have this one particular interaction that'll happen when I'll encounter someone who's not an animator, not in the animation industry. They might be a barista or a server or just someone on the street, and they'll ask me what I do, and I'll say I'm an animator. Oh, for what show? Bob's Burgers, DuckTales, Moon Girl, whatever. And I know immediately from a certain look in their eyes that
Mm.
they think I'm the animator for that show,
Yeah.
that I do all the animation. And it's in a way, it's an understandable conclusion to jump to because it seems to make more sense than the reality, which
Hmm.
is there are hundreds of people working on these shows to make it happen. It's a huge amount of effort. And in a way, like if you don't understand how it's done, that seems insane because it is insane. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work and a lot of time poured into making that. So I would say, and again, I'm sorry it's going
Oh,
on
you're
so
fine.
long, but appreciate that there's a lot of time and a lot of skill, even in the shows you don't like, even in the really
Hmm.
crappy capitalist, absolute like bottom of the barrel, lowest common denominator shows. There's still talented people working on them. Which is not to say that you have to like the bottom of the barrel stuff, but look for, I guess, the top of the barrel for you. You're allowed to like what you like.
Hmm.
And especially now is an important time to appreciate independent creators, independent shows, and all of the student films. Check them out. They're making some incredible work. These students, it's better than a lot of the stuff that the
Hmm.
TV studios and streaming studios are putting out. Go check out their work. I swear you're gonna love it more than most of the primetime shows that come out. There's some really excellent art and creativity happening in animation, and um, and it deserves, because there's so much time and effort put into it, so much heart and soul, especially in those indie projects, especially in those student films. It deserves to be listened to, and it
Hmm.
deserves to have your heart opened up to it so you can, be influenced by what it's trying to say.
I couldn't say it any better if I tried myself, and there's no better way to end this than that's been Kat. I've been Julian. This has been the Cartoon Chronicles podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.